I'm like, well, I mean, I don't have a program for like this stuff. It's a program for about something else, but I mean, you want to buy a program. She goes, no, like, can you help me one-on-one? And I'm like, it wouldn't be cheap.
Yeah.
You know, like if you ever get a good idea, just that's default, just always be like, it's not cheap. Like just, that should be a reflex.
Yeah.
If they're just like, can you do this for him? Like, it's going to be really expensive. Like that's just be your filler word.
Yep. Guys, welcome back to Entrepreneur Unleashed. It's another episode where you get to learn vicariously through the experiences of other business owners who have been through the things that maybe you're currently going through. And without further ado, I just want to introduce you to my really good friend, Armin Shafee. He's here to share his story and help you learn those things that can help take you and your business to the next level. And we're just going to jump right in. Armin, I want to just thank you very much for being willing to come in here, share openly. I know that you're a very candid guy and you're so giving of your time, effort, and energy. People who are watching this are just going to get so much value.
Yeah,
so
thanks. Thanks for inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, Armin, we call this show Entrepreneur Unleashed because I want to give basically a view into your life and background to help other people learn from maybe the things that you've been through, maybe some of the struggles you've been through, and the things you did to get through them. But we have to start at the beginning, right? Yeah. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about you and your background. Like, tell me about like how you grew up, where you grew up. Like, what was the young Armin like?
Young Armin. Funny enough, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a singer and a rapper, and my name was Young Armin.
Really? Are you serious? I didn't know that about you. Okay.
So I was I used to like freestyle battle with people.
Okay.
And my name was Young Armin. So you said that, I'm like, start from the beginning.
Young Armin. Okay.
Yeah, funny enough.
So like beatboxing or just rapping?
No, it was like I beatboxed when other people rapped.
Okay.
And then I would rap over people.
Okay.
Beatboxing. And then I'd make music. I'd sing. It's pretty much multi-talented in the music space. Yeah.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I thought I would grow up being like Justin Bieber.
Oh.
I thought I would grow up and be famous.
I definitely did not have any of those talents when I was growing up. Like, you would not want to try to see me rhyme, at least not to a beat. It was definitely, it would not have been pretty.
I was obsessed with it. I was obsessed.
Okay.
I was 16 and I built a studio in my mom's basement.
Okay.
And I did it back then.
Wait. 16, you built a whole studio in your basement, like to record and everything?
So back then we had like Blackberries.
Okay, yeah.
And so it was easy to like, I did a lot of hustling. So I would, again, in a good way, like I would buy things and sell things. And I had this Blackberry I bought off Kijiji for $110. I took that Blackberry, I took it apart. I sold the Blackberry itself with its cases for $100, and I sold the SIM card in it, which is an unlimited plan, for another $100. So I made $200 from it. From the $200, I bought a Nintendo DS with 2 games and a joystick of some sort. I don't even know. I didn't play. I got that. I listed that on Kijiji, and I sold the Nintendo DS for $250, and I sold the joystick for another $70. So I made $300.
So Kijiji, you weren't living in the U.S. at this time?
No, I was in Toronto. Yeah.
Okay, so that's where you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up. I was born in Scarborough, Ontario, and not downtown Toronto. Like, it's like uptown of downtown.
Okay.
So Scarborough is like it's kind of like I would say kind of similar to this neighborhood in Miami, like next to Brickell. Like Brickell or downtown Miami would be Toronto, and then there's like 20-minute drives away, 30-minute drives away. So I turned that Nintendo DS into $300. I took the $300 and I bought a $250 virtual DJ set. And so, sorry, that's my DJ one. I bought an audio interface and a microphone for $300. So $100 microphone, $150 audio interface. My family gifted me a laptop, MacBook, that I used for like 8 years after that. My dad bought it for me. And I learned how to do Logic Pro 9. So I set up this audio interface with the microphone. I would like listen how to put sound effects over my voice. Just all these hours of learning.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I was charging like all these gangsters in my high school like $20 an hour to record like rap beats.
Okay.
It's pretty funny. That was a little gig I had.
So you were selling the rap beats to them?
Yeah. So I was making beats and selling them. I sold the beat for like $150. I was like,
serious?
Yeah. And then I would charge
16?
them. Yeah. And I was charging $20 an hour for some of them to just record their raps over
in your studio,
over instrumentals. And I just put gunshots over it and they would be so happy because they didn't know how to do that.
You got to love it.
It was great.
It's having a talent that others don't possess.
Right. I didn't know back then I was an entrepreneur. I didn't know because I just thought I was just being resourceful, finding a way to make money. And I love doing it. So at that time I wanted to grow up and be a famous singer, but I'm like, I'm not going to depend and trust on other people to do it for me. So when I was 14, I was in middle school and this teacher worked with his brother with Universal and they were working with me on music and then they got signed. So they just dropped me off as one of the artists. So I'm like, I can't depend on them. So I started building my own label.
Really?
Yeah, it's called Perplex Productions. Yeah. I thought if I make my own music label and I sign people, I'll have the power, so I'll be able to give myself an album if I wanted to.
You wanted to be an owner.
Right.
Not just a participant.
Funny enough, I didn't even know what these things meant. Now I look back, I'm like, I created a solution out of the absence of something I wanted.
Yes.
I just realized if I don't have the power, I can't get what I want.
That's
a very simple formula.
Truly insightful.
Yeah.
You know, wish more business owners would just understand the simplicity of that truth.
Very simple stuff. Simplest things that you do over time really well is actually what gets you success, not the complicated things. But I grew up in Toronto.
Okay.
I was born in Scarborough. I have an older brother. He's about 9 years older.
Okay.
We grew up together. My dad passed away from cancer about 4 years ago, so he was with me my whole life. But he was just really busy all the time. He was super successful back in Iran, where we were. And he ran this clothing shop, and he made all this money. I think people thought he sold drugs because like he made so much money at like in his 20s. Wow. He drove a Porsche to pick up my mom for her for her wedding. And so like he was this really successful guy, and then he came to Canada. And there's one limiting belief that just completely killed him, is that because he's in Canada, he has a disadvantage. So he thought his language was an issue. He thought the people were different. So he had 3 back-to-back failed businesses. I mean, they kind of worked well, but they had to shut down eventually. A cafe, 2 pizza stores, and then his 4th one was a renovation company, which he ended up doing until he passed away. And during that time, my dad just trying to figure it all out. My mom was working like 2 fast food restaurant jobs and like taking care of the household. And so I grew up with this like essentially a single mom in a weird way, because their marriage was like complicated, and she was really there all the time, and he was dealing with his own stuff. So I grew up with like a father figure was just my brother. And even when my dad was around, he wasn't really a father figure. He was just there. And he was a lovely guy. Like he was really cool. We had a lot of fun. He was like a friend, but he never was like a father, like teach me something. My brother was more of that, but he also modeled my dad. And so they were both kind of absent role models as male figures. I just kind of followed them around as a kid to kind of learn from them. So when I was like 9 years old, I was listening to 50 Cent with my brother in his car. So that's why I feel like I'm an 80s baby,
right?
Because I grew up with that kind of culture when I was, in my younghood. And so I grew up with like no male figure. My mom was the only strongest role model in the house, and we fought a lot. So I kind of found some refuge in like making family out of chosen friends.
Okay.
And, I remember how much it used to bother her, because she would say like, you like your friends more than us. And I'm like, well, I relate to them. They want to listen to me. So I was like 14, 15 years old trying to figure out how to find family not at home. Interesting. And I look at that, like that's probably the foundation to why I became so good with people, because I became obsessed over the idea of people and psychology and like, how do you want them to like you, get them to like you? How do you get, like them? I'm really grateful for all these things that happen, or else I wouldn't have the kind of skills I have today. Most people would, want for a good childhood. I think bad ones create great people.
I think there's definitely something to be said about the combination of both nature and nurture.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is you were likely predisposed to excel at certain things because you were so committed to just getting it done. If you didn't have it, you went out and got it.
Yeah.
That, and then surrounding yourself with the right type of community, finding people who actually supported you, listen to you, help to basically get your dreams, like the motivation they needed for you to continue to walk through them. When you look back at that time, I know that the loss of a parent, you said your father passed away about 4 years ago?
4 years ago,
yeah. That's never an easy thing to go through. And obviously I'm going to definitely want to touch base on that in a little while. But looking back, in this time of your life, you're 14 through 16, you're getting ready. Well, at that point, you're entering high school. At that point, like what was your schooling like? How did you do in school? Did you take the traditional route that most entrepreneurs have, or were you were a little bit different?
So the interesting thing was, from about grade 6 to grade 11, I was trying to just fit in somewhere. I was really scared because like I wouldn't get along with anyone, and I would only get along with misfits. Like I was a misfit, but I didn't see myself as a misfit, so I was very confused. I'm like, I'm a cool guy, no? I mean, look at all these talents I have. I was a genuinely, sincerely confused kid. I was like, I'm nice, I'm funny, I have all these talents and fun to be around. I'm like, why do I not fit in? I learned later on actually from a few moments why, but I was just trying to fit in until like 11th grade, which is about 17 years old or 16, 17 years old. And during that time, I went through a lot of, different phases. Freud says that 18 to 25 is identity crisis age. And I feel like I went through that kind of like early. So I was trying to just figure out like, who am I? And so because I didn't know, in its absence, I created a strength called being a chameleon. I was able to be anyone. I was hanging around with all my dark-skinned friends. I'm saying it, my black friends, and then my Arabic friends, and then my Persian friends, and my white friends. And I was like really good at becoming like any of them.
You can blend in.
I would like wearing a crew neck and snapbacks and rapping with my black friends. Like that was the culture with them. And then when I was with my Arabic friends, I was smoking hookahs with a mohawk and and a rosary
I'm not gonna let
chain.
you just flush through that. You had a mohawk?
Like they used to do this haircut where you shave, like you fade the sides.
Okay.
And then you put your hair in your face and you put like a whole
little like fan thing.
Yeah,
going?
you look like a skunk, really, kind of. But it kind of looked cool. Some people made it look cool. And like a rosary chain. Okay. And like wearing vests with t-shirts. They had this whole thing. I remember the old SOP on it. It was a whole flow. But like every day I would change. And so like I got really good at just adaptability.
Okay.
So like it kind of became a survival mechanism. So like I was friends with everybody, but I was really no good friends with anyone. Right? Like kind of a dabbler.
So you had a lot
friends.
of acquaintances, but not a lot of friends.
Yeah, like no one would actually that I would be very close with.
Okay.
And so up until the 11th grade, I really just didn't pay attention in school because I was just trying to figure out how to survive, like how to fit in, how to make friends, how to be happy, with like a girl. And I would do all these crazy risk-taking things to like prove myself and get people to like me.
Give me an example.
Well, for like one of our talent shows in like the 10th grade, I think I did the most talents in one act. Like I went up and I danced tectonic to music. I put lights on my fingers and I did a whole show. And then, no, actually that was the ending. I started with playing the guitar, singing a song, and then beatboxing, and then rapping over it, and then doing the dance. So I'm like, I was just always trying to think peacocking was the way to make friends. Yeah. If I impress them, they'll like me. Like I think that's like a childhood thing. Like, at home, like unless you were imperfect in my family's eyes, like you weren't shit. And so I think about that. Are we allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Feel comfortable doing you.
Yeah. So Persian culture is like, like unless you're the most impressive, it's all ego based. Like unless you're the most impressive, like you're not shit. And on top of that, it's funny because if you are the most impressive, they'll tear you down. So it's like, there's no winning in the culture of like how my family was raised. And I just blame our grandfathers, grandmothers. Like it's just, as far as time goes,
it's generational.
Everything's optimized around being afraid of what others think. Everything. Like your whole life is optimized. Like what do other people think about you? And then do something based on that. And so like our families were all in competition. Our brothers and sisters were in competition. I feel like a slave that freed himself and like ran away.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
Like it felt like that when I found entrepreneurship, because like it was the only place where I wasn't judged and everyone was really just trying to develop each other to succeed. Like everyone had a chance. And this concept was foreign to me because at home nobody had a chance. Only one person can. If they're older than you, you shut up. If they're if they're bigger than you, you shut up. If they're more perfect than you, you shut up. And I'm like, this is not cool. So I took that into high school with me. And so I just thought if I was the most impressive, the loudest, the most talkative, then people would like me. And it did the exact opposite. It's like the need and the desperation to make friends left me with none. So it was only in the 12th grade where I really broke free, and I feel like I had an actual high school experience. I don't even really feel high school for 1 year where I actually did well in school and did stuff. And it's because I moved. So I had this limiting belief that where I lived, all the girls don't like me here. All the guys don't like me here. I never got invited to stuff. So I'm like, if I just move cities.
Right.
And so luckily we moved from Scarborough to Newmarket, which is about an hour drive difference north. So I moved to this small city in Newmarket, Ontario. Everybody's like super white. I'm like the only not like tan skin kid. I'm the only Middle Eastern. It's like me and like 4 brown people. Like it's weird. Like there was like nobody. So I'm working out at the LA Fitness there, and I've made a few friends there. And I'm like, I got to choose a high school to go to for my last year of high school. Where should I go? And they go, well, do you want to have fun? And I said, yeah. I'm like, I have 2 options. I have this public school, I have this Catholic school. But I'm like, why would I go to a Catholic school? He's like, go to the Catholic school. I'm like, what do you mean go to the Catholic school? I'm like, public school, like I've been public school my whole life.
Right.
He goes, yeah, but see, the Catholic school girls, like their parents don't let them do anything, so they're way more wild.
Oh.
And I said, that is a fair point.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's a fair point. Okay.
So, me being a 17-year-old kid, I'm like, I'm going to Catholic school.
Okay.
My mom's like, you're going to Catholic school. Because we were Muslim, they were Muslims, they turned Christian growing up.
Okay.
So they're like, why would you go to a Catholic school? My mom, you don't understand. I think it's better for me.
Yeah.
Their education is better there. People are
sure.
better there.
It was all about the education.
And so she's like, you're really weird. So we had to pay a few $100s to buy like a uniform. And I'm like, that's even better. Like it's so much more efficient. You just wear the same thing every day. Yeah. That's so much better.
Right.
I like every day I wasted so much time dressing myself for
just
school.
Trying to figure out what to wear.
Yeah, and I always wanted to look good. And so it was like a fashion show every day. It was like so dumb because that's like what we did there. Even for guys. Like if you're Arabic and, heterosexual, you really care what you look like. And so in this school, I'm like, I just wear the same t-shirt, just wash it. I'm like, that's so much better. So I got really good with that. I got really comfortable. So I go to the school and I'm like a foreigner, but for some reason I felt so empowered. I loved change. See, a lot of people are scared of change.
Yes.
I love change. I was like, man, I've been in this one place for so long. I want to taste something new. I want to try something new. I want to make new friends. I want to be a nobody, make my name again. So I went into the school, and I remember I was on I'm going to be popular here. I just made up my mind. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to do all the right things. I learned enough of what not to do in the last school. I'm going to do all the right things. It's like Art of War. I was just like, who do I make friends with? Who do I not? Like, I was so strategic about it. I'm like, if that person doesn't look popular, like,
you're not going to.
Like, I don't even care if they look at me. I'm just not going to fall into it. Because in the other ones, I accidentally fell into these like weird groups. It was like, it was just nice. I'm like, hey, what's up? And then we just start hanging out every day. I'm like, wait, I didn't choose you as friends.
Right.
It's a pretty dick thing when I say it now. But I was a kid. I was just trying to figure out how to win, at the social game. So I did achieve what I set my mind to. Within 3 months, I had a lot of these friends that were like girls, really cute girls. I didn't do anything with them. They were just friends of mine. But like all the girls knew me and they like giggled over me. And I'm like, this is what I've always wanted as a guy, like validation. And all the dudes, like some of the bigger like jockey dudes, they were like always squaring up with me and trying to fight me because I was tall. Okay. But I was like, dude, I don't do that. Like I'm an artist, like leave me alone. And so I created my whole new name. No one knew my past, anything. And about 4 months in, into that, I get recruited to Amway.
Oh.
So I get a job because I'm bored. My mom literally told me, she's like, why would you get a job? You can make $10 an hour. I'm like, Mom, I have nothing to do. I'm like, I can make $200-300 in a weekend DJing somewhere because I had that skill. I don't want it for money. I want to meet people, do something. Network. So she's like, all right. And so I worked at this place. I was the only guy with 8 girls working at a suit shop. It was like a half-half, suits and girls' clothing. Okay. So I was the only guy there. Okay. And so I was doing really well there. And one day, this cute little old man walks in. He's like, you're a sharp salesman, and you should work with me. And I didn't know what network marketing was. So he took me to a coffee shop. He explained it to me. I'm like, I'm in. Okay. I paid my last paycheck I had to him. And so I started reading every day, like The Magic of Thinking Big and How Winning the Devil. Like they give you stuff. Yeah. So I'm like this 17-year-old kid that already looks like a substitute teacher because I look old and I have facial hair.
And you're tall.
I'm tall. I'm wearing dress shoes now with a coat over my uniform. So I look like a teacher there. I'm already like so mature for my age. And I just start not caring about all the other stuff to do. And I'm reading every day. And as I'm reading, because I realized I was more developing myself and not caring about getting people's validation, a lot more people wanted to be my friends. It was really interesting. That was my first lesson I learned. There was this crippled kid at the school that worked there. He went there. He was in a wheelchair. And I forgot what he had, but it was like he was skin and bones. Like it was something where like...
Some muscular issue.
It was a muscular thing, yeah. But he was a sweet kid. Okay. So he was around every now and then. And he came up to me one day. He's like, I need your help. I'm like, what do you want? And I was just reading my book. And he goes, I need your help me become popular. I'm like, what a turn of tables.
Yeah, right?
I looked at him. I'm like, I'm not popular, man. He's like, what are you talking about, man? You're always with girls, confident, you're all these things. I remember that moment. I'm like, damn, like life is interesting. Like here I am for like my whole childhood.
Trying to do that.
I was him inside me.
Now
someone's consulting me, right? I'm like, damn, like with enough time, wisdom comes,
See, I think what you're sharing is really critical because you shared all the traits that essentially make an entrepreneur basically an unleashed entrepreneur. Yeah. You're a risk taker. You're not concerned about failing. You're willing to put in the effort and energy to self-develop. Yeah. Now, I had this conversation recently with another business owner, and we were talking about the whole concept of entrepreneurship, whether or not it's a nature-nurture thing. Is it something you're innately born with, or can you develop it? I'm curious. Like, what do you think? Is that something you think you're born with, or you develop?
I think the only thing you're born with is your body. Okay. Right. Your mind is like a white.
So you're the tabula rasa type of approach. Yeah, you're a blank slate. Everything you can experience, you can add to it.
Yeah. Like when you understand Think and Grow Rich, I've been studying it for 5 years now almost. To the depth I have, it's all just a sense impression on the mind. So there's nothing I have today that I didn't learn at some point. Nothing. And the only thing innately that you're born with is survival instincts, like fear, like not even fear, but danger. Like
but that's a knowledge thing. What I'm talking about is also an aptitude thing.
You mean a personality?
Like, are you capable? Like, for instance, let's say you grew up without this desire to take risks. Yeah. Like that's a desire or a comfort zone. Yeah. Like if you didn't have that, would you be the entrepreneur you are today?
No,
definitely not.
But I also like if you put a baby, like it goes really deep. Even the way the baby's born could affect how they grow up, because they might come through a less traumatic or more traumatic birth. That alone just makes them more apt to like stronger in handling it. So like you put any baby in a household that is, you know, very rich. You put another baby in a household that's not very rich but very kind. You put another baby in a household where everyone's an athlete. Like it's like a 99% chance they're going to grow up like that. Yeah. And it depends. Like they either grow up just like that or completely opposite to rebel. But like either way, they're under the control of the environment.
Yeah, they're influenced by it, definitely.
Yeah, like
100%.
Like if there's a famous essay written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's called The Law of Compensation. And Napoleon talks about it. Law of compensation essentially in a very simple way is that for everything is balanced out. Everything's compensated in its place. So like if you lose something, you gain something else. And it always is, it's absolute all the time. Never, there's an exception to this. Okay. If you gain something, you lose something somewhere else. So it's like for everything, there is an opposite to it to balance it out. But that's the law of compensation. Existence wouldn't exist without it. In every electron, in every atom, there's electron, there's proton. Like there has to be negative and positive ions. Like has to be.
Yeah, you have polarity and law of conservation all working in unison.
So the law of compensation kind of umbrellas the fact that if I grow up, for example, in a really bad childhood, I'm given positive qualities for it. I grew up in a positive childhood, I'm giving negative qualities for it. Not because I'm being punished, but because it has to balance. So it's like if you've always grown up with money, then there is in its compensation on the other end, the lack of money knowledge because you never needed to. If you grew up with no money, there comes in the other compensation most of the time, an obsession over wanting to understand money. So like everything is balanced out. So like if I grew up in a family like in mine where it was really dysfunctional, like it was odd for us to say I love you and hug each other until like I was 20 years old. Like, and I was the one who initiated it. Like, and it was odd. I realized how bad it was when I tried to hug or say I love you and it was like, tough. Like my family would look at me like, I'm like, say it back. They'd be like,
right.
It was really awkward. I'm like, damn. Because I grew up in that, like, but I became such a good leader in it, creating loving spaces.
I can definitely relate to that because like I actually grew up in an extremely loving family. My mother like loved and doted on us like you wouldn't believe. But my mother and my biological father separated when I was a baby, and essentially, I didn't have a father figure for a long time, and then basically, my sister was born from a different father. My younger sister, so I'm fifth of six kids. I have two older brothers, two older sisters, one younger sister, and my younger sister, she has a separate biological father than me. But as I was growing up, he sort of filled that role as biological father, but not entirely. And I can definitely remember that the challenges that we faced were on the financial side of the spectrum. Like my family was not financially savvy. I mean, your father had great financial experiences. My family definitely did not have that. And I can definitely say that probably motivated me to want to learn as much as I possibly could about money and how money works and how to actually put it to work so that I didn't have to work as hard for it. Yeah. So I can definitely appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, I remember a memory. One day I decided, I was like 14, I think. I told my dad, I'm like, I want to come to work with you. I want to make some money. He's like, all right, I'll pay you $20 for 12 hours. I'm like, I'm not stupid. I'm 14. I'm not stupid. I'm like, $20 for 12 hours. He's like, you don't have to come. I'm like, oh, God, all right, whatever. He's like, what are you going to do with $20? I'm like, I don't know, buy candy. But I'm like, 12 hours of work for 20? So like I was already like more of a audacious kid. Yeah. Like I would question things a lot.
You were savvy and audacious.
Yeah, and so I go to work with him 12 hours. We do all this work. It's like this tiny basement downtown Toronto. Okay. Really awkward shaped staircase, but it's like 3 sets of stairs. Okay. And we're in a small basement, and he's ripping out laminate, and I have to take it up. Like, it was really. I'm like, how do you do this every day? Like, I was shocked. I'm like, how do you do this just for money? Like I was a kid, I didn't understand like why. So we worked for like 12 hours straight, and then at night the owner came, the guy that hired him, and I think he was getting paid $500 for that job. Like $500 just to like do the laminate, the backsplash of the kitchen. I'm like $500. And I didn't know anything about money, but I knew that's not a lot of money for all this work. So he comes in, and this is like one of those traumatic moments in my childhood where I decided like, I'm going to be rich. He comes in, it's like this really old man. It's like in his 80s. Okay. But very successful. Clearly he has all these properties. And he comes in, he starts yelling at my dad. And I'm like sitting there like, ripping laminate, and I'm like watching like what's going on. And he's pretty much yelling at him because he put the wrong colored backsplash in the kitchen. And because it's and it made sense what he was saying, by the way. I agreed with him because it was a small space. And so you need to have light colors to make it feel bigger. Right. So my dad put like a dark brown.
Made it look smaller.
So he was upset. And so he's like, what the fuck is this? And I start to witness my dad in an inferior position. It's my dad, right? Like, it's hard to look at your father figure in an inferiority complex. And he was just like kind of begging him like to be okay with it. And he's just started like put his head down, tail between his legs. I'm like watching. I was getting furious at the guy. And I was also scared for him. And I was upset and I was sad. There was a lot of emotion going on. He's just yelling at him, like, this is fucking shit. I'm not paying for this. He's like, oh, come on. You know, like, I did this. Like, you know, it's good. It looks good. He's just trying to convince him. And the guy's like, change it. Or I'm not paying you. He just walks out. And I was just like stunned, like standing there. It was way worse than I'm making it sound.
No.
Yeah, but it was a bad confrontation. I mean,
this is back when you were younger.
Yeah. It was way more traumatic. And so I said nothing the rest of the day. I just worked. And we're driving home. And I remember we're driving home. We even had this like countertop over the car and we're holding it out of the window. Like he was really scraping by, you know, like we had this beat up car, countertop on top of the, like it was illegal what we were doing, but we were holding it together. And I remember holding it and he's holding it and we're driving home. And I'm like, why would you let him talk to you like that?
You said that to him?
Yeah. Okay. I was 14, a little attitude. I'm like, why would you let him talk to you like that? And the next thing he told me is probably the moment where I decided like, this life isn't for me. Okay. And he said, because I need the money more than he needs me. I remember I'm like, man, the need for money can do this to a man. Pretty much shatter all your self-respect. I knew my dad was trying his best. Like I didn't think bad about him. I just thought that's not going to be me. I remember, and you know, I swear I meant this in a good way. I looked at him like, I don't want to be like you when I grow up.
In the best way possible.
Yeah, and I said it like that, and it was lighthearted. I'm like, Dad, there has to be a way you can make money with your mind. Like I don't know, I didn't know. I'm like, you have to make money with your brain. Like there has to be a better way. There can't be it. He's like, I know. He's like, that's why I want you to go to school. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna learn that in school. But I was like 14. I'm like, I don't think but I'm just saying, there's a better way.
You could learn it. Yeah,
I knew I could learn it. I knew there's a different option. There has to be. Like any person who's conscious, even 1% conscious, walks down the street of any city, you see enormous amounts of wealth, enormous amounts of poverty. You have to question at some point, what are they doing differently?
But so many people don't question.
They don't. And like they think because they just start with the belief system. They're like, oh, that's not for me. Like why? And like this is a true lifestyle philosopher. Their number one question in life is why? Like why are things the way they are? Why does it have to be this way? I just did that all day when I was growing up. So I remember looking at him like, there has to be a better way. He's like, yeah, you know, that's why I want you to go to do better than me. And I'm like, I don't think I want to be like you when I grow up. I don't want to do this ever. He goes, no problem. You know, this is why I want you to do better than me. I remember on the drive home that day, I'm like, I'm never going to make money this way. Like it was just like a decision made in my mind. I was just done. I'm like, I'm never going to work for labor to make money. There's no way I'm going to do it ever. I don't care. I'd rather not make money.
Trading time and sweat.
I just won't. And like, it wasn't even that. It was the principle of like people owning you and then abusing that power by talking to you like that. So it was more about, it was more personal than it was like logical. Logically, it didn't make any sense to make that money for that much work. But personally, I'm like, in exchange for money, letting a person chip away at you.
Right.
I'll never put myself in that position. That's not an option. Because I'm like, no amount of money's worth that. Like, you know, they say die in your standing or live on your knees. Like, I would rather die standing. That was the first time I realized I'm going to be something more. Like, I don't know what that was, but I'm like, I'm not going to do this whole. Like, I'm not settling for mediocrity, you know?
So you ventured to Amway, essentially. You were exposed 17. To all these different ideas and concepts and strategies, really mindset shifting for you, right? So what, during that time frame, was like the most impactful thing?
When I was in Amway, their professionalism.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't make much money. I mean, I lost money, but like, I didn't lose money. I made $97 in 3 months, but I paid, I think $400 in that time.
Yeah. So you invested in the mindset, essentially.
Right. And I was so happy with it. And everyone around me just over and over, it's a scam, pyramid scheme. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking. I don't even know what those things are. I was a kid. I'm like, but all I know is that they're making sense and you're not. So shut up.
Right.
Like, it was really easy. Like after Sal's presentation, I'm like, my family is the 97%. It was tough for me to like shake that off me. I'm like, they literally only think like poor people.
Yes.
I can't trust anything they say anymore. So it was like really easy for me to go home and like not care what they think. Cause I'm like, of course you're going to think that. You don't have the things I want. It's kind of, I think that's important, a little ruthlessness in the beginning. Cause like some people don't have the heart or the courage to do it, to cut off, because it's painful to cut anything. But what they don't see is underestimating how much pain they're already in from sticking attached to it. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm like, I just learned how to be professional. Like I started to see myself bigger than I can be. And it was the first impression. That was the first time in my life someone like, for some reason, I felt like I can do more and be more than I am. Mm-hmm. Until that moment, I thought the only way to get rich was to win a lottery, find the money somewhere or steal it. Or make friends with people that are really rich and they'll give you free shit. Like that's literally the 3 ways I thought you can have wealth. See, it never occurred to me in my mind I can earn it or make it.
That you were worth it.
Yeah. I didn't think it was an option for people like me. Mm-hmm. And that's what was in my head, because like all I grew up around seeing is struggle. So I'm like, why would I think it's possible? So that was the first time. It's funny because even though people weren't making a lot of money, like one dude was usually making some good money. Like the guy at the top who's been for 18 years.
Right.
Only had a Mercedes E-Class and a nice house in the middle of nowhere, and he was making 10 grand a month. I'm like, now when I look back, I'm like, that sucks. Like that's a really bad trade. But he was the happiest dude ever.
Well, again, like, it's all about perspective and where you are in your individual journey. I mean, I think the most critical thing that you said right there is that you made a decision to stop planting weeds and instead plant an orchard. Figuring out the right people to put yourself around, the right ideas, and say, you know what, at the end of the day, you're not going to go to a weed farmer to learn how to grow an apple orchard. Yeah. You're going to talk to the people who are actually doing what you want to do.
That's a great analogy.
Take advantage of the things that they know. I mean, that's the whole concept behind Entrepreneur Unleashed, is to learn from the people who have done it. So at that point in time then, did you go on to university at that point, or what happened?
Yeah, so I barely passed high school.
Okay.
And it's because of a technicality.
Okay.
So because the last 6 months of high school, I got into network marketing. First it was Amway for 3 months. Then I got recruited into Vima. It was like this younger version.
Vima. Okay.
Yeah, it was like this really young movement. Like there were lots of kids around my age and 5 years older that were driving really nice cars, making 3, 4, 5 grand a month, no jobs. At that time, that was like a life. Like that was a dream life to me. So I remember I got recruited into it, but more importantly, I had the chance to public speak, and that's really what I wanted. I just wanted a chance to be on stage. Remember, I wanted to be a singer growing up.
I remember. Yeah.
So I found a sneaky workaround to being on stage. Instead of singing, I was speaking. Well, okay. And so I kind of, in a weird way, I tricked myself to like getting in front of, like getting the validation and recognition I wanted from people by being on a stage to speak about stuff. And in the process of doing that, I realized I fell in love with speaking valuable things that actually help people's lives more than just them plotting because I made a good song. So it was like, it's weird in a funny way. I started with a stupid intention, ended up gaining wisdom to not want that thing anymore. So like now I just speak because of the feeling of knowing I've helped one more person have a breakthrough they never thought about. I don't speak because of, like, I actually don't like if someone praises me after I speak or anything. Like it's uncomfortable. I've trained my mind and my ego to be tamed like a beast. I don't, like, nothing hits my mind. Like you can't compliment me. It's weird. It's really weird. Like it's my mind is shut off from it. Like there's no emotion about it. The only things that make me feel good is what I think about myself when I've done a good job. Like it's a self-esteem thing.
So you must love stoicism, because I'm in love with that philosophy.
Yeah,
like
I haven't studied it.
Oh, you definitely need to pick up some books. Epictetus and you name it. There's some amazing Stoic philosophers out there. But you're basically creating this infrastructure in your mind to absorb the concepts that'll actually take you to the next level, whatever the next level is for you at whatever stage you're in at the moment.
Yeah,
you're testing the waters. You're experiencing things like. You didn't go to university then?
No.
What did you do?
Only because I was running that network marketing business, I would stay up late 3-4 times of the week at events, at home events, running them. And I would sleep late, and because of that, I would sleep in, and I'd miss the morning class. The morning class was my favorite class. Was philosophy. So
that's why you don't know stoicism.
I had a good mark in that. I had a good mark in all the classes, and that one was the only bad one, and was the one I liked. I didn't like the other ones. And my teacher was an asshole. Like, he was a straight asshole. He actually embarrassed me in front of the entire class once, and I never forgot it. And I think he got like a heart condition after. I mean, yeah, it's, I thought I'd feel good when I heard it 3 years later when I was like successful or whatever. But I'm like, I feel bad for the guy. Yeah. So I don't know if he's alive anymore, but hopefully he is. But his name was Mr. Hubbard. Funny guy. I actually liked him a lot. Like, he was really funny to listen to.
He had his rules.
Yeah, he was a little like, I don't think he liked, I don't know if it was a Persian thing.
Okay.
Or like, cause I was super different. Or if it was just networking, like he made fun of me in front of the class for it. But I also, to be fair, I did my entire final project for my biggest score on the philosophy of network marketing. To be fair, I asked for it. He's like, it's like 20% of your mark. You got to make a philosophy of something. I'm like, all right. So I made philosophy of network marketing. And I used Plato's cave as an example for the 97% of the world inside of the cave. And the 3% come outside and they don't see what the real world is. So they work in jobs forever. And I made a really good presentation. I crushed it. At the end, like everyone's just staring at me.
Wow.
My girlfriend at the time, she just looked at me. She like clapped a bit. And my teacher just like looked at me like so upset. Right. Cause like, you know, obviously I didn't know at the time. I was offending all of them. I mean, that's what they believed in. So the next day when I was doing a test, I went up to get during like everyone's dead silent in the class. I wanted to get a pen from him, and he's like, "Oh, you want this pen?" Like really loud. And I'm like, "Yeah, sir. I just want a pen." And he goes, "Why don't I sell you this pen? Why don't I sell you this pen, and then you can sell it to 3 other people, and then they can sell it to 3 other people, and then you can make all this money off selling pens, and the only time you'll need a pen is when you're writing off your taxes on the beach."
That's too funny. So
I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, it's like real time stuff right now.
Yeah.
I was sitting there and I'm like, that was a dick move.
Yeah.
And I was super embarrassed. My face went red, and I'm like, sir, that sounds like a great idea. I grabbed the pen, I sat down. Everyone's like, like laughing and shit. I remember sitting there and I'm like, fuck you all. Yeah. It was like a moment. I'm like, you're all going to be broke. I was like, it was a malicious moment. But all you guys are going to grow up poor, fucking miserable. I'm like, you can watch. I'm going to get out. And my girlfriend at the time, she looks at me and says, "Are you okay?" I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I just sat there with like fire in my eyes. I'm like, watch, man. And it's funny because like those moments, they define your motivations. Yeah. And then like hopefully you grow up and you get out of them. It's not healthy, but like it drove me. It made me very clear on what I need to do. But so like that was, so that guy, he was my teacher. And I come to get the report card.
Okay.
And I was about to fail because I had a 44. And if in Canada, if you're under 45, they're not allowed to bump you up. If you're 45, 46, 47, 48, they'll take you to 50, which is a pass. Okay. So I was below that. I was like 44. So I'm like, I failed high school. And I was like kind of proud of it. My mom was like, please don't do this. It'll be embarrassing to the family. I'm like, no, but if I was a dropout and I become rich, like that's a better story. To me, I'm like, if I'm a dropout, if I fail high school, I'm like, content, yeah, way great content. I was already thinking about the whole story in my mind. I'm like, it's a great, short video one day. There's no shorts back then. But, so I remember sitting there and I'm like, man, I don't really care what happens. So I go to get a report card and I notice it's a 50. And so I go to school. The day, you can go and ask questions about your report card. And I'm like, hey, Mr. Arbor. He's like, hey. I'm like, I thought I failed. He's like, I passed you. I'm like, for what? He's like, I don't want to see your face again.
Wow.
And I'm like, thank you, sir. I'm like, I didn't want to see your face either. And he laughed. He's like, what are you going to do now? Do your scams? Get put in jail? I'm like, I don't know where I'll end up. It'll be better than this. And we just had this like rivalry. It was really funny. And I walked out and I'm like, fuck that guy. But I liked him. It was like hurtful because I'm like, I actually enjoyed his company.
It's interesting. If any of the viewers actually have gone through the caveman dialectic, what you just laid out was literally the caveman dialectic. Everyone in the world around you is looking at shadows on the wall, a reality that they believe to be true. But you uncover the fact that you can literally just turn around and walk out of the cave and see the real objects, not just the shadows they're casting on the wall.
See, like this whole, like, I don't get affected by compliments or criticism. Is like, it got started early on. Like, I didn't care that they made fun of me. I cared that I did a good job. I don't know what it was, but like, I guess this starvation of self-acceptance in my family, because most people need other people's acceptance, it bred a strength in me. Okay. Where I was more obsessed with like, how do I feel good about it? Again, like compensation it balanced out because I got no validation at home or anywhere. I found validation in myself. I got very lucky. Like I would honestly never change anything about my life, ever. Like I can't. I genuinely feel like
created you.
I feel like I'm like the luckiest guy in the world. Like the way I think, what I have, who I become, the wisdom I've gained in such a short period of time. Like I honestly feel like I'm the richest man in the world.
Well, you're the architect of that reality.
100%. And it all came from adversities. All the things that people are afraid of. And I'm like, when are we going to realize that those are the things that actually make us stronger? So to me, like, he passed me just because. And I remember I'm like, fuck, man, I wish I failed. But I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay. At least my mom doesn't cry tonight. And so I just completely left behind traditional education. Like that day, I was like, I'm free.
Probably one of the smartest things you ever did.
Yeah, I was so happy. I walked out on the world is mine. Like, I can do anything. And I just rushed through this mess. So like a short version of what happened after that, I was about 18 years old. Okay. That year, my 18th year, the beginning of the year started with me doing really well in that network marketing company and then it crashing. Okay. Because I met a girl. I met a girl on my graduation trip.
The story of many a fallen angel.
I was in a high momentum, crushing it. I made like $2,000-$3,000. I was like 17, and like just a matter of 6 weeks. To me, I was like, that's what I made in 3 months in my last job. I was just crushing it, and I made this girl. I fell in love with her. I'm like, I went to Punta Cana for my graduation trip, and I met this girl, and I was with her every day. And then I came back. I'm like, she lived in Niagara Falls, which is like only an hour away from me. And so I tried to date her for 3 months, and like it came to the point where like all I talked about was my network marketing business. Wow. And she was just like, I can't do this. Like, you got to choose. And I'm like, it was nice knowing you. So we broke up, but it like emotionally drained me.
Oh, you know? Yeah.
And I got distracted. And then after that, I needed money because I wasn't making any. So I get pitched this opportunity to go door to door selling. Okay. And you get like $1,000 when you sell something door to door. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I want to do this. And I made $1,000 my first week. That was the worst thing that could happen. Because I thought it now worked. And for the next 2 months, I made no money. Every day, 10 hours a day, knocking on doors. And honestly, it wasn't even ethical what we were doing. We were selling like furnaces to people who didn't need furnaces. But I was a kid, needed the money. They were telling me it's okay. And if they were doing it and getting away with it, my role model was, it's fine. So I did that. It chipped away at my spirit. Because I got out of this highly inspiring state of like building something, dream, personal development, to like just trying to make money. Okay. And then that was the moment I realized the difference between just being in sales and building something in sales. Okay. And because I was inspired with a purpose in the network marketing company, and this I was just trying to make money. And so I did that for like 4 or 5 months and just struggled. Like, tried to build a team, it didn't work. I tried to sell things, it didn't work. It just bad things kept happening. Okay. I was kind of going broke. I was just scraping by. At the end of the year, I got into a car accident. So I left that, I skipped through like 3 companies. I went to one that was like legitimate, but they give you like $400 a sale. But it was good training, it was good leaders.
Also door-to-door sales?
Door-to-door sales, but it was a legitimate company. So like they actually had a reputation. Okay. So I started making some money there, and I was like 18, and I made like $4,000 in like 2 weeks. It was like a lot of money for me. It was like an 8-figure technically month, 6-figure month, right? Because 4 you make 8. Yep. It's over $100,000 a year. So I had this amazing day. And this day in the morning, they promoted me to sales manager. I'm the youngest in the team, and I'm crushing it. And that same day, I got really lazy. I got my first taste of what success does to you if you're not prepared. You're really lazy the whole day. I just hung out in the van. I just dropped everyone off. I was just talking shit. And then we went to 3 parties that night, and I party hopped. And I was taking a shot, and then I had this brand new car as well. My dad had bought me, helped me buy this car. It was under his name. I only had it for 3 weeks, that car. And his biggest fear was me crashing it. And I'm like, look, I'm not going to crash, relax. I'm paying for this. I'm good. That night, I went to 3 parties. My night ended around 3 a.m. I was so tired. Now, I just started driving. I didn't really expect...
No skill sets.
No. Yeah. So it's 3 a.m. I'm driving home. I'm like 2 stoplights away from my house. And that was a really interesting day because it was the best day of my life, right? I just got promoted to sales leader, made all this money. I felt popular. I was hanging out with these guys and blah, 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 right? Like these guys I looked up to when I was a kid. And as I'm like thinking about the day, I started dreaming that I'm driving. I fell asleep.
Oh, goodness.
And I woke up to like the, because I was going over the sidewalk, and I just drove right into this massive utility pole.
Oh my gosh.
On the right side. So if there's a passenger, they would have been dead. Like, I hit it really hard. It was like 70 kilometers an hour, I think, like 50 miles.
Oh my goodness.
So it was really bad, but it's because your foot gets tired, it drops down. And it hit, I woke up while I was spinning. And so my car hit and it spun and knocked off a fire hydrant. And it was on like a hill. It was not too steep, but it was like a bank in a Tim Hortons, which is like a Dunkin' Donuts in Canada. It was like a bank in a coffee shop, and it was on a hill, so it stood on a hill. And I thought I was dying. So, you know, like my eyes open, and then like all I see, you smell burnt plastic. The song I was playing, my airbag. And I was just like sitting there, I was frozen, like, paralyzed.
Truly state of shock.
Yeah. And so I opened my eyes, I'm like, I'm dying. And I closed my eyes, I'm like, I'm good, let's die. Like, I was acceptant of it. I was just like, hey, I've always been good at that. Like, I had a strong mind. I was like, if I die right now, I've done quite a lot. Like, I've inspired people. Like, I was having like a ceremony in my head. I'm like, it's okay. If I die right now, I'm proud of myself at 18. And I opened my eyes, I was alive. I'm like, shit, okay, good. I was looking for my phone. I grab my phone, I walk out. I'm like, in my head, I'm already thinking positive. I'm like, I just made all this money. I'll just fix the car. I had no concept of what it costs to fix a totaled car. So I get out of the vehicle. I go out and I look at it. It's completely demolished. The engine's like gone. Tires down there. Pieces of it, of the car just down the street. And I'm like, that sucks. That was the word for it. I'm like, that sucks. I looked up at the sky right after, and I'm like, thank you. I don't even know what I was doing. I was just doing it. And I remember looking at the car. I'm like, oh, God. First thing I was like, my dad's going to be pissed. So I mustered up the courage, and some dude walked by. There's construction workers. They ran up to me like, hey, man, you okay? I saw the whole thing. And I'm like, yeah, I just fell asleep. Like, I didn't know the concept of insurance. So I just told them the truth. I'm like, yeah, I fell asleep behind the wheel. And so when the cops came, like, I should have, they tell you should be like, a fox ran across the street, so insurance could pay for it. Luckily, we got insurance to pay for most of it, but like, I was honest. I was like, I fell asleep. That's my cause. So, but the road was really simple. It was like wintertime. So I remember I had to call him, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, in the middle of the night, he's like, what happened? I'm like, crashed the car. He's like, oh. So he shows up with my mom, my brother. That's how you know the difference between a love of a mother and a father. They all get out of the car. My mom runs up to me. My dad runs into the car. My brother looking at the car like, shit, what a waste. Yeah. And my mom's looking at me like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. So that night was really scary because I remember like, I was just really like, it was tough. We drove home. I was like still my positive shock. I think I created a positive reflex as a survival mechanism because I was just being positive about it. Okay. I was being optimistic. I'm like, thank God I'm alive. I'm so sorry. Like, da-da-da. I get home and I sit on my bed and like all the noise goes away and I'm just there in the darkness and silence. And like, it just hit me. I almost died tonight. Yeah. Like, I'm having this moment. Like, I actually almost died tonight. Like, I was only 19 years old, 18 years old. I'm like, I visualized the funeral. I'm like, this could have changed my entire life, my entire family's life.
Oh, absolutely.
So like, I think the weight of my recklessness hit me in one shot, and I just started crying like uncontrollably. And also, when you grow up, they put it in your mind this whole like hell, heaven. So part of me is like, could have died and gone somewhere. All this shit, and I just couldn't stop crying. Going to my dad's room. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to, he's like, it's okay. Like, don't even talk to me. It's like, just leave the room. Wow. I remember I left, man. I'm like, shit, I have a choice to make. In that moment, I realized I was in that car accident because of the job I was in, because I need to make money. That was a moment I learned it doesn't matter how much I make. It matters how I'm making it. Okay. Because how I was making that money put me in that predicament in that night. It didn't matter if I made a lot. If I make a lot, but I do it in a way that deteriorates my character, who I am, or doesn't make me happy, what's the point of it? So like, in a really young age, I prioritized my peace of mind over money. And just realized I'm never going to sell myself out. It's the same principle with my dad that day. I'm like, I don't need the money enough to fuck my life up. So it's like that day, I'm like, I have to leave this job. These guys are terrible influences. I was smoking cigarettes with them. I was doing all this bullshit. The next morning, I grabbed my mom's car. I have my hand in a cast because my fingers got broken. And I grab my mom's car and I drive to the office to work. I go in, I'm the first day of sales leader. First day as a sales leader. I walk in. I'm like, everyone sit down. All these 25-year-olds sitting down. And I'm like, last night I crashed my car, almost died. They're like, man, you okay? I'm like, yeah. My point is, I still was not late.
Wow.
Don't give me fucking excuses. And everyone's like, no problem, man. I'm like, let's get to work. So I'm like, I took the opportunity to like take this near-death experience as like a leadership lesson. Okay. And so I started leading this team for about a month. And in that time, no one knows this, I got into a second collision in my car in the van they gave me. And that was when I really got like really afraid. I'm like, I can't be here. Like, this is like God's trying to tell me leave. Okay. So I leave. I left with money in my hand. I was making good money, but I'm like, I don't care about the money. And I left that company and I cleansed my soul. And I'm like, I got to figure out who I am and what I got to be. So for the next 8 months, I went on to like all these readings. I read Asking Is Given by Jerry and Esther Hicks and like Kevin Trudeau, who's I think in jail right now, but he had this Your Wish Is Your Command audio set. I would listen to that 12 times. I was reading Think and Grow Rich at the time. I was doing all the spiritual stuff. Like, how do I create successful, how do I become a spiritual CEO? It was like my entire vision for 8 months, but I made no money. But I would manifest shit. So I would win a lottery for like $25 and pay for gas. Or out of nowhere, I'm like, I got to pay $150 for my phone bill this month. How's it going to happen? And like that same day, my friend would call me, but like, I have a landscaping job, pays $150. Can you come? Like I would manifest stuff. It was really freaky. Like it was just manifesting. I'm like, this is really cool stuff. And so I started to do it and I realized this is good, but I'm like, why am I still broke living at my mom's house? Well, because I wasn't doing anything that provides real value in the market. And so I got an opportunity after 8 months of doing this whole self-work to go out to Vancouver, leave my home, live on my own. They paid for your house, but like you live with a bunch of salespeople and it's like really good sales company, and rebuild myself. And my mom begged me not to go. And I'm like, got to do the right thing. I got to go build my life. So at like 19 years old, I flew out to Vancouver, living on my own, traveling Western Canada, doing door-to-door sales. But now like I'm making really good money and stable and it's proper, like just good training. We're all learning good stuff. And I did that about 4 months. I paid off all the debt I incurred. I paid for a whole trip for my family and my dad at the time. Took him to Bahamas. And that was a starting point where I'm like, I think it's time for me to not be in sales anymore. I want to do something. And I had some friends at the time that were on the same wavelength as me. And they said, let's start a company. So we started a company. We just incorporated it. We really didn't know what the hell we were doing. But we were a bunch of kids that were too smart for our own good. And we rented this office for like $1,000 and we shared it. And it was like 4 of us. And funny, one of them now works for me as my head of client success in the company.
Oh, okay.
The other one I think runs, honestly, at this point, probably a multi-million-dollar crypto thing in India. I have no idea. I don't try to think about it. He's insane. The other one, I don't know what happened to him. I do actually, but I don't think he's doing much. So the 3 of us did some really big things. And in that year, it was kind of like, it was like in a cult. Like it was weird. It was like this guy would study Warren Buffett. And he was like 18, 19 years old. He would study like Jeff Bezos and like he would practice on us. So I spent a year pretty much being indoctrinated by this mindset where like, I'm just insane. Like the guy was insane. He was my first real mentor, like, but he wasn't trying to be a mentor. I was just like learning from him. He was a brilliant guy.
Because he was testing everything out on you.
Everything. And so he tried to build a company using us. We were just a bunch of motivated idiots running around. I was an insecure sales guy and the other one was his girlfriend. And the third guy, he was just also insecure, just trying to find something to do. And we all learned skills. I learned how to like sell a lot better and build out sales systems. And the other guy learned how to code. And the other one learned how to do infrastructure and operations. Like he was developing us. And I'm like, but I never like trusted him. I'm like, you're too smart. Like, what is this all for?
Yeah, what's the catch?
So we made our first like few $100 as a company. And like, we kind of spent, it was like a family for a year. Okay. We exercised crazy like things like I don't think anyone would ever do. Like he invented this thing called a daily efficiency report. Okay. And it was a spreadsheet where we all just log every minute of the day what we're doing. And we categorize what we're doing, the efficiency level of it, and at what time.
Like time auditing on steroids.
100%. And we did it for 8 months. Okay. And I remember like I got to a point where I thought I worked so hard and I realized like 12 hours a week I'm working on my business. The rest I'm wasting time. And so he like taught me all these valuable principles about business, but he wasn't trying to teach me. He was just doing it. And I was watching. I'm like, I want to learn. And so like for 8 months we did this like it was like a cult. Like we would sit around on a Sunday. We had nothing else to do. We were totally just around each other all day, every day, just working on becoming CEOs. And we would sit around like look at each other's DERs. Really? So like and like yellow was like bad. It was like mediocre, like average efficiency. Green was like great efficiency and red was bad efficiency. So like, you know, it was as personal as like we didn't hold
aspire to green.
Well, one of the guys had a girlfriend working there with him. And so like they just had all this time blocked off for sex and they called it energy release. And so we had all these like
that's creativity.
Really uncomfortable conversations, but like we were forced to develop and like mature and like learn how to build things. And so I remember like we would check how much time we spent in the toilet and this, and like it made me like it was a boot camp, and like you can never pay someone to do this with you. Like the amount of shit we did together, like you'd have to be insane to do. Like that was one. We used to study executives every week. We'd choose a company. One person has EOW, Executive of the Week, and we would have a weekly like meeting, and they would have to present. And so I learned like Travis Kalanick and like Uber, and like I would study Tony Robbins because I was a big fan of his, and I was learning like his background. The CEO of Pepsi Cola is like an India woman. Like I didn't know this.
So this was a true like CEO incubator.
It really was. I think this guy was like really practicing on us to like build something huge. He's always been a big thinker. I haven't talked to him in years, but we like were shareholders of a company, and like he would educate us on Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett and like understanding business and CEOs, and it was really interesting. Like in a weird way, I feel like that was one of my unique advantages coming into the coaching space, because I don't think anyone had that kind of background before. Right. Like they were
definitely
just a coach,
definitely not.
But I came in with this like military training. Like in me already,
Deep
like
wealth of knowledge.
Really, yeah, it was interesting. We would do executives, we'd do CEOs, we would watch movies together that was about business, like The Big Short, and he would break it down what happened, and he would like educate us on like all the big banks, and he was so obsessed with it. I'm like, how do you like this stuff? It's so boring to me. And at the time, like we did a lot, man. Like we would, he would created commandments, like commandments of our group. And like we'd read it every week, and he would teach like it was insane. Like one day he was teaching us input, output, energy. Like the things I teach today in my business that I understand really well with CEOs that I train, he was doing with me when I was like 20.
So you essentially, just to push us forward now, you've taken all of this wealth of knowledge that you've been exposed to, all of the hardships you've been through that have basically sharpened your knife, pushed it forward now to present these things to other entrepreneurs, to other business owners that you coach. Like, tell me a little bit more about what your business looks like today. Like, what do you do day in and day out, and how do you do it?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of living my dream life now. Pretty much all I do is coach clients and create breakthroughs, and I love it. And then make strategic decisions as a CEO in the business. It took a long time, though, to get to this point. 6 years in coaching, 2 years online specifically. And so now today we have a management team of, I think, about 6 to 8 people, 6 to 8. And we have a team size of like 12 to 15. That's not including contractors. And then we have like 250 clients, and we have like a few dozen people in our mastermind. And so like now I'm developing in my managers, like my leaders, what I developed over the last 6 years myself. So like I had to learn how to do all of it myself. Now I'm like teaching them how to think so they could do those things themselves. So I'm like, I have a leader in my sales department, clients department, and team and operations. And so like I have my COO, for example. And so like I'm training them every day now and like mentoring them, kind of like how that person did to me a long time ago, and like all the mentors I had up until now. And my job is to grow their thinking so they can think in a way that creates good activities and results. And so all I do now is I'm reading this book, The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
I'm familiar with that one. Okay.
Oh my God.
It's great.
Love it. It's like a business Bible. Like Think and Grow Rich is like my life Bible. This is like my business Bible.
It's called The Road Less Stupid?
The Road Less Stupid. It's pretty much like a book written for CEOs from the board of directors. That's like how you look at it. So it's like all the shit you shouldn't do and should do if you want to be successful. And so I'm reading this now, and like all my time is spent thinking.
Hey guys, I hope you were really enjoying this episode. It's a lot of great information. Before we go any further though, I want to share with you something we just released. It's our brand new Tax Express class. And in it, I'm walking you through strategies that can help you outsmart the IRS by taking advantage of the tax loopholes available to LLCs and S-Corps, and even just general businesses here in the United States that can help you cut thousands and thousands of dollars off of your tax bill every single year. You're not going to want to miss it, and the link is in the description below. Now, let's get back to the episode.
I spend maybe 6, 7, 8 hours a week coaching actual like group calls. Everything else is like just decision making. So like I sit there and I think, I ask myself great questions. I find bottlenecks, I fix it. I'm like, it's really cool. It's like a puzzle. It's fun for me. Business is a game for me. Now I'm teaching them how to get better at doing things, managing things while I'm thinking about things. So today the business, we've done like close to 4 million now in about 2 years, which is pretty impressive. To me, I didn't think I would make that much in 2 years. I thought in like 5 years I'll get to like,
Oh, pretty impressive. It's extremely impressive.
Yeah.
The vast majority of businesses never break 6 figures.
Yeah. And I don't even look at them. You know what it is? I'm comparing it to this. The first 3 years of business as a coach, from 2017 to 2020, I was running seminars. And so in the full 3 years, I only made about 850,000 in revenue. And I kept maybe a few $100 grand in profit over 3 years. So like I made 100 grand the first year, 250 grand the second year, and flipped about 500,000 the third year. Roughly numbers, right? And I remember like, but I had all these events, all this overhead, all these people. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know if I was doing it right. For 3 years, I ran around like a monkey, but like I felt like I was successful because I was on stages and hundreds of people, and I felt like Tony Robbins. That was like my dream.
Right.
But I didn't really optimize for being a CEO. And then in the last 2 years, I've made 5 times the amount I made in 3 years the first year in less time. So I'm like, it's impressive from studying myself.
Tweaks.
Yeah, like
those little tweaks.
Like I'm comparing myself to myself. I'm like, wow, like that's pretty cool. And I'm just getting started. Like I want to make that my monthly income. Like it's, $4 million I want to do it in a month. So we're optimizing now to get to our first $1 million a month like run rate. And it's just everything's numbers. I'm just realizing it's all math.
One of the things I find so impressive about you is that you are such a deep thinker across all different aspects of business. I can remember you and I were at a dinner, so probably a couple months back.
Yeah.
I remember we were sitting there. It was a good meal. I can't remember the name of the restaurant though.
Nusret.
Yeah, Nusret. Yeah. And you were just telling me about the spreadsheeting that you're doing.
Yeah.
And all the little and the audience has no clue what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The spreadsheet was so in depth. It's like pages and pages long, like hundreds and hundreds of rows deep. Like that's just, you take the concept of saying, okay, what are every single component of the business that I'm operating? What are those metrics? How can I measure for them? How can I optimize for them? And then ultimately, are they something I need to keep, or do I need to get rid of it?
Yeah,
that's just so impressive to me.
That was our sales system. It grew tremendously since that day because I realized I didn't have enough in it. And then I built a dashboard. We created there was a chart where we were looking at. So I was showing you like a scoreboard, like how we track every metric. But then I created a dashboard. Okay. So the dashboard looks like a game scoreboard. It looks beautiful. And then we create a KPI calculator. So all you do is like put in the price point, your close rate, show up rate, your booking call rate with setters, and it'll spit out for you exactly what targets you need to hit that amount of money per month with those conversion rates per day, per week, and per month. So we calculate our KPIs from like just a simple calculator. We even built like a KPI legend. And like I was thinking about all these things. So I'm like the biggest thing about running growing a 7-figure sales team is like proper tracking and KPI bottleneck meetings. Like that's literally it. If you could do those two things really well, there's nothing you can't do.
Well, I think that's the benefit of, or at least the focus of building out every aspect of all the different teams that you have, not just sales.
100%. Yeah, but I started in sales because that was the first place I started tracking.
Okay.
Yeah, so now, since then, we went to finances, and now we're in clients. And so, but the principles were simple. It's like, if I know how to accurately track something, which means I got to define the KPIs the same way as everyone else, right? So some people might define a different KPI. So I made a legend for it. I came up with this idea. I'm like, no one does this. Let me create a legend. Like, this
what it
means this. Yeah. And we built all that, and then we created a leaderboard where it like funnels all the information to like who's the bottleneck, and then we go, what is the bottleneck? And then we created goal trackers, progress bars. It was just crazy. Like, so I did all that, and then I duplicated it, and I built it in the money side of my business. So we have 3 dashboards now: sales, money, and clients. And so the money one is really sexy because you got a dashboard showing you money in, money out, net cash, break-even point, and profit margin. Most people don't even think about the break-even in their business. I never did. But I'm like, there's a fundamental fixed amount of cost I have every month, no matter if I make money or not. So now we have a backwards ticker on the dashboard that shows me how much more is left to hit break-even. So really, I don't even think I profit until I hit that break-even because you don't.
Well, you don't.
Exactly. So like no one thinks about this. We read the book Profit First, and so we strategized. We strategized everything around that. And then, so we have a tracker that shows the dashboard. I have a money in dashboard, a tracker where it shows all my different incomes, different months, and the average throughout the month so far, and the total for the year. And then we have the money out. So all the expenses categorized perfectly with averages and everything. And we have a projection calculator. So it's like how much we might be spending this month. And we have a whole summarized dashboard. So like I have that now, and now we have the clients one being built out. So like tracking the average time it takes a client to make their first sale, for example, or first client, and like their success rate, the churn rate, the renewal rate, the upsell rate, the satisfaction rate. So we're like building all these dashboards. And it just makes me giddy thinking about it. Like, I can't believe I wasn't tracking stuff until recently, because I made my first like 1.7 million just like literally just being talented, just going up, booking calls, closing sales, doing all the stuff. And now I'm like, I wasn't running a business until I was tracking stuff. That's
Armin, that's why you are actually an entrepreneur. Because if you think about it, most business owners don't know anything about their business. They don't spend any time analyzing all the intricacies of what is making them money, what's not making them money. You actually have made it your job to focus on that aspect, and then you surround yourself with a team to do everything else.
Yeah, and it wasn't always like this.
No, obviously
like,
not.
I was that...
You're the overnight success that took 4 or 5 years to get to
100%. My personality wasn't even built for this. I was more of a creative type, a sales guy. I was a good starter or a bad finisher. I was a dabbler, not a focuser. It was like a really big shift in identity that allowed me to like this stuff. And it's like I was coaching some elite clients today, and this one girl, she's emotionally driven. I'm like, you made good money. She made like 50 grand in the first 2 weeks with me. And then she made like 10, 20 over the next few months. And I'm like, it's because you know how to start something well, but you don't know how to finish. And she's like, I just hate numbers. I'm like, you should love numbers because they love you. And she's like, I'm like, start with the thing that you're scared of the most or hate the most in your business. That's probably where you're suffering the most in bottlenecks. She said, my finances. I'm like, well, you want to grow a business, right? But you despise a part of the business in order for it to grow. It's like being married to someone and going, I really don't like your face, but you cook well, so we can stay together. But I never want to look at your face. Like, let's just hear each other overnight.
It's even worse than that because the finances are more than just a part of your business. It's 100%. Literally the lifeblood of your business.
It is the business, which is I'm starting to realize your finances is the business.
Exactly.
Like, so I'm now learning how to read financial statements and P&L reports and looking at those things to make actual decisions moving forward. So
that's literally what you should be doing as a business owner. You shouldn't be making a business decision without understanding, 1, how does it impact my cash flow? 2, how does it impact my balance sheet? And 3, what's the P&L impact?
100%. You know, it's interesting because like the same principles apply in projects. Like, so I streamlined all of our project management in the company because I thought about it. I'm like, there's only so much resources to go around: time, energy, money, people. So I'm like, when you make a decision, you have to calculate also the time, energy, money, people cost. Most people don't, though. They go, it just sounds like a good idea, let's do it. And I always say, like, be careful of good sounding bad ideas.
Yes.
Good sounding bad ideas always sound great, but it's probably a bad idea. 90% of the time it's a bad idea if you're not focusing on the very thing that matters. So like now I'm like someone goes like, we should do this. I'm like, that's awesome. So what is it going to cost in time, energy, money, people? What's the projected timeline? What's the ROI if we get it? What's the downside? And are we willing to live with the downside?
Yeah, I call it asymmetrical risk. You need to know, you 100%. Need to understand what is the relationship between my upside versus my downside in every decision you're making.
Yeah. So what I was, and what I mean is like, I never was like this. Never. Okay. Like I was like a flash in the pan, like excitement, dabbler kind of guy. And it's interesting because now I look back, I'm like, I changed. Some people think they're just like that. I'm like, you can't think that as a leader. It's not an option. No. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, it's not an option where you think I'm this way. You have to be any fucking way. You have to be anything you want. Anything you need, the goal needs you to be. And people are like, and people are selective. Like you can't be selective. You really can't. Too many people are picky with how they want to do things. You're not allowed to. If there's any position in business and in life that you're not allowed to think that way, it's in when you have a definite purpose in life and it's in business. Your business is a byproduct, a mirror of what other people need from you, not about what you need from it. It's like you don't build a business, the business should build you.
I was listening to another coach recently. He was talking about a variety of different things, and he was using an analogy that had to do with sports. I'm not a big sports guy, but I thought the analogy was so apropos, especially to what we're talking about now. He was basically saying, he asked a question. He goes, what makes a great coach? And he said, most of the time people answer that the best coach in the world is the one that has the best game plan. But that's not true. The best coach in the world is the one who makes the right switches at halftime. Because it's the halftime coach that actually wins the championships. Brilliant. And that's what a really good business leader needs to be able to do. They need to be able to say, okay, what's working now, what's not working, and be willing to change. Because it's that ability to say, you know what we were doing before, it's perfectly fine that it's not right. Now we need to figure out what is right, and let's put it into action.
Yeah. And I was thinking of what you were saying, like 100% it is. Your ability to make strategic decisions at the right times is the make or break of the business. I had this recent breakthrough, like take the CEO of a small shop doing less than $100,000 a year. Okay. It's a CEO. I mean, technically not, but.
Well, that's the vast majority of businesses in the U.S.
Like, I mean, they're a business owner, but I'm saying like a CEO just means you have an executive position in a corporation. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're in the making. If it's going to grow, you're going to become a CEO one day. So like take the owner of a business that's doing 6 figures, less than 6 figures. Then take a CEO of a 6-figure business, a 7-figure business, an 8-figure business, 9-figure, and a 10-figure business. The common denominator amongst all of them is the CEO, is that there is a CEO.
Correct.
Everything else is variable. I was thinking about this, like everything's variable. The market could change, your offer could change, the niche could change, the talent could change, the team could change. The only thing that stays persistent is the CEO. So if the business is, what's the difference between the 10, 9, 8, 7, 6-figure businesses? The CEO. And so it's like most people neglect that. They're trying to build a business harder than they build themselves, but you are the limitation of the business. I'm sure if I took a billionaire and gave them my company right now doing, $2-3 million a year, they would probably make it $2-3 million a week, probably really quickly.
If that billionaire was self-made billionaire.
100%. Like they've learned, like
they learn all the things that make
not placed there. Like they built a company to $1 billion. They have to know so many things I don't, like so much resources, time, ways to use people, ways to use things, things that I don't even know about using, or like ways to do things. There is so much gap between me and that person that they could probably within 5 to 10 decisions completely change the company to, $100 million company.
But your job as the CEO of your business is to learn how to fill that gap.
100%.
How to fill the gap from where you are today to being the CEO of tomorrow.
And people think that you fill the gap by learning more tactical things in business.
Oh, definitely not.
You don't. Like the billionaire doesn't know a better marketing strategy than you. Like that's a big one.
Yeah.
The billionaire doesn't know a better marketing strategy than you. They know how to think and make better decisions than you. See, that's the biggest thing. It's like that's the whole focus of my mastermind. Like it's exciting. I'm practicing on them kind of in a weird way, like the other guy did with me. And I'm teaching these guys like how to really build like $100 million businesses as I grow mine to 100. And I'm like, it's like all about thinking, 100%. All about thinking, data. Like it kind of leaks into your other areas of life. I was thinking about my relationship life, and I was looking at data.
Okay. Data and relationships.
I was looking at my data and my relationship life, and I started making different love life decisions.
Oh.
And I'm way more at peace. It's like this recent breakthrough I had. It's kind of interesting. It might actually be useful for people watching. So I realized I had this moment where I was like watching all these interviews with these like really top level entrepreneurs married and stuff, and all of them keep saying the same thing. They keep saying that, first of all, they weren't even attracted at first to the person. They were more like, yeah, it's you. Yeah. Second is that it never was like a romantic feeling. It was kind of more companionship and friendship, and then it turned into romantic. And third was like, it was completely like organic and logical. It wasn't more like my heart was pounding when I saw her.
It wasn't passion.
It wasn't passionate.
It was love.
I'm like, why is the common denominator? Like obviously in the few biased interviews I saw, I'm like, there's something here. And I started thinking about it. All the times I've ever felt excited about a girl when I meet her, I'm like, well, how did it end up? I look back, I'm like, they didn't last that long. Excitement was the deciding motivator for why I pursued them, because I'm like, oh, it's exciting. I was optimizing for excitement in my love life. And like most of the time, those things fade away eventually. And then you see the person, you got to do all the hard stuff, the boring stuff, the everyday stuff. And if that doesn't work out well, it doesn't matter how exciting it was.
Exactly.
And then now you build a relationship based off like dopamine. Like you build a dopamine relationship where you just got to keep doing stuff together to feel the excitement to last. So you have to like have more sex or like go out more or like dance more, do things.
Right.
And as long as the relationship is dependent on doing things to keep the passion alive, it's never going to exist. Yeah. So then I'm like, what's the only relationship I didn't have that way? So the first relationship, the girl I was in love with, I was like a child. I was like 20 and she was much older than me. And, but I was like in love. I was romantically in love. But at first I knew her for 6 months. I didn't feel that way about her.
Okay.
I was just friends with her. She actually came to one of my seminars, and then we were just friends. And then
it developed.
It just over 5-6 months. I think I just saw her at an event somewhere. I'm like, I just want to go out with you right now. Let's do it. Like it just felt it, organic, natural, and that turned into a 2-year strong relationship where I learned a lot. It was a beneficial relationship. I mean, it came with a lot of complications, but I grew the most from that. I actually was in love with her. I wasn't in love with anyone else when I went to be with them, and it was easy. Even though it was so hard, I had physically the harder complications with her relationship. She was much older. She had 2 kids. She had twins. And then dad had left. And I was like, my mom hated the situation. She was 11 years older. And so, but I'm like, it was so, it was so fulfilling. And I'm like, I never felt that way about her. So I had this distinction made. What if I'm optimizing for the totally wrong feeling when I'm dating? I'm like, so now I don't look for excitement anymore. I'm almost like interested in seeing who I'm friends with already that I might naturally be a great fit with to be with. But I never thought about that. And like, obviously if anyone that's in my life right now hears that, they might go like, oh shit. But it's not like that. It's more like, it's not anyone I know now. But again, I'm not closed off to it because I realized that all the good relationships started out with, I would never like deal with you. But here's the reason why I figured it out. Here's my assumption based off data. The reason why the excitement is a poor choice of strategy for finding love is because it's not really what the relationship is going to be like.
100%.
So you're optimizing for a feeling that's not going to be what you actually sign up for. It's like tasting. That's a really good example. It's like having tasting the icing on the cake and determining the whole cake tastes like this now. So it's like, this is really tasty whipped cream on the cake. But what if inside there's shit you don't like fruits and stuff? Right. You don't know that. You got to eat all those carbs. You didn't think about that, but you're like, oh, this tastes good up front, so I'll buy the whole cake. And then you go and you're like, oh my God, it's nothing like what I tasted at first.
Right.
So I meet a girl and I'm like, excited. This is it. And you know what's happening? Confirmation bias is happening.
Oh, absolutely.
So because you want to like them, you're going to find every reason why they're great. Yep. You're not going to see all the bad stuff. You're not going to see the other stuff. So it's just a really shitty strategy for developing relationships. I'm not saying it doesn't always work. I'm just saying it most of the time doesn't. Right. And it actually makes no sense if you think about it. So I'm like, what's the real strategy? The real strategy is this. You don't try to feel excited. You don't feel this. And if you do feel it, it's a red flag to me. Because I'm like, it's like a trauma bond. Like you're really you need something from them that you think that they have that you don't. So you feel this like need for it. I'm like, that's actually an unhealthy feeling.
So there's definitely this secondary business that's down the right road for you for like relationship advice and relationship counseling.
I mean, my mind works in a way if I get obsessed with anything, I'll probably build a good business around it. But
I love it.
I might do men development eventually, like masculine development. But the biggest thing is this, and it's changed the way I do business, changed the way I live life, changed the way I even choose friends. I'm optimizing for companionship now.
I love it.
So like when I meet someone, I'm just like, do I feel like even seeing them again? If there was no ulterior motive, like, do I just want to see you again? Because if I don't want to see you again, I'm probably not going to want to see you normally.
Right.
If I'm dating you. I'm like with friends. I'm like, do I even like hanging out with you? In business, I'm like, this idea or this method or whatever, I'm like, could I just do this every day without trying or making like if it has to be based on motivation to do it, it's not going to last.
So essentially it all boils down to optimization of the things that matter.
Yeah. Like the things that should feel easy to do. It's weird. Like if you can't do it forever, you shouldn't do it. So like I can't have passionate sex forever with a person all the time. So like the relationship can't be based off that. I can't, have dancing every night or, sit down and watch a movie every night. Like you can't build a relationship off that. You have to build it off the things that actually happen every day. And if you don't enjoy those, the actual regular activities every day, you won't want to be with the person eventually. You'll get bored and have to find a new person. And so like, to me, I'm like, now the way I choose how to do things is less about the emotion behind it and more about the calmness behind it. It's weird. Like I'm not looking for excitement in my decisions anymore because that usually rushed me into bad decisions. Excitement is no different than fear. It's the same feeling of an emotion. So I'm like, they're both actually really bad.
Yeah.
There's nothing bad about being excited, but if you could find excitement in regular
decisions
things.
Based on that. Though.
Yes.
100%.
So it's like, if you're excited about it, I'm like, that's great. We'll talk about it next week. Like if this is a great idea, I'm like, great. Tell me like all the reasons why it's not exciting. If you can't justify why it's a bad idea, then it's probably a good idea. But if you can justify why it's a good idea, it's probably a bad idea. So like you want to.
The justification model is the challenge because anyone can tend to justify any decision they're making if it's based on emotion because they can come up with all the reasons.
So I started doing the opposite. That's why I'm like, it's why it worked better because I would justify why it's good, why I should do it. Now I'm like, convince me why we shouldn't. No, sorry. Like convince me why we shouldn't was how I usually did it.
Okay.
Because like, look how good it is. Now I'm like, convince me why we should.
Right.
So I optimize to actually see the reality of things.
Exactly.
So like now when I meet a girl, it sounds weird, but like, I'm not like, what do I like about her? I'm like, not what do I not like about her? Because then you can still find it. Yeah. My point is though, like, I'm in an energetic state of like, convince me to be with you instead of I'm convincing myself to be with you.
Right.
It's a completely different energy. And because of that, you're more powerful anyways, like in energy, you're the authority because you don't need them. But like overall, I'm just like, I'm not going to try at all to impress you. Let's see if we like each other in just
as
normal
who we
space.
Are.
Exactly.
As who we are.
And
no
that's
masks,
a way more sustainable foundation. If I were to choose to date someone or marry them, I'm like, I just fuck with you. Like we can hang out.
But I think that's also super special within the actual business context as well, because you just are who you are and you attract your clientele based on your personality. They're attracted to you because you are who you are, and you're not trying to put on a front. You literally, like everything that you're sharing, I know this is exactly who you are. And that's one of the things I'm personally so attracted to, because I think that the things that make you unique are also what make you super special to the business owners that you actually influence, the people you actually serve. Now, looking at your business now, how long has the current structure, the way it is set up right now, how long has that been in business now?
2 years.
2 years. So if you had to look back on the past 2 years, where would you say, like, what was like the biggest challenge that you faced over the course of the past 2 years?
Losing all the money I made.
Okay. Oh, you got to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So no tracking.
Okay.
Caused me to make emotional decisions. I took a lot of big risks that paid off. All of them were profitable, but I ended up with pretty much spending the entire 1.7 million I made last year.
Okay.
By the end of the year, I had less than 100 grand in my account. And I didn't have the concept of profit. My ideal profit, I define profit as like, I have money to spend now.
Yeah.
So I would just spend it. I'm like, that's profit. You know, like we're 100% profitable because I'm spending all the money we make because I can spend it.
So you made that classic mistake where money in means money I have.
Exactly.
And the reality is money in is nowhere near the money you actually have.
Now, the lucky thing is I've never had a craving for like, again, validation I killed a long time ago. So I didn't have a craving to spend on bad, like stupid things. Like I didn't buy sports cars or anything. Like the most expensive thing, honestly, I didn't pay for it. I just had really expensive dinners because the girlfriend I had at the time. But luckily, I just bought a lot of expensive programs.
Okay.
So I always bought
it wasn't personal
skills.
Indulgence. It was investing back.
I paid $100,000 in cash just for a day spent with somebody to teach me their like marketing system. Like that's the kind of money I spent. And so like I spent it, but like I learned all these cool things. Yeah. And so luckily my risk taking, like my recklessness was profitable. Only not because it's good to be reckless, but because what I was reckless about with the money actually paid off.
One of the things I say is that every dollar you invest in yourself is a dollar never wasted because no one can take it from you.
Yeah, 100%.
You can't lose it in bankruptcy.
All of it's in me now.
You can't lose it in divorce.
Yeah.
You can't lose it if your partner wants to
50%
break
of your
up
wisdom,
the business.
they can take it.
Yeah. So the investment you make in yourself is always the most valuable investment you can have because the dividends it pays is lifelong.
Yeah, that's my only luck from last year. And so the biggest thing, that was last year. And then the year before that, I had initial success, which is a terrible thing. So like, it's kind of odd. For 6 months, I did it wrong. And then I bought a program and I started doing it right, but I realized I had to redo everything. So I went another 6 months. So I almost like procrastinated. I almost lost everything.
I can't let you just like skip over that because that I think that's really critical for other business owners to hear.
Yeah.
You did it wrong, then you made a decision to change it, but you now had to invest more time to implement the change.
It doubled my cost.
Double your cost, 100%.
It's like it's the cost of do-overs. So do-overs is what people don't expect if they do it themselves.
Yes.
So it's like you can literally like I try to save just 10, like it was $5,000 to buy this program, and I got on a sales call, it didn't close me. I'm like, for the next 3 months I'll just do it myself. So for the next 3 months I paid $10,000 and made my own course the wrong way. And then I funnel hacked a bunch of things. So I spent countless nights just trying to make it better, like Russell Brunson stuff. Countless nights, and I never quantified loss of time because I had so much of it. Because you have so much, you don't really track if it's worth losing or not. Right. But I lost a lot of time. And then I did everything wrong. I had this launch and like we only made like $2,000. And I was $8,000 under whole. Like my seminar business was dying out because I was trying to go online.
It's like a gut punch. 3
months later, I'm like dealt with this, like, I don't know what to do. And then I went into this state of paralysis. And so like fear is a very interesting thing. It grows like a cancer. It starts with indecision. Any one of these things could bring you to fear. Indecision, hesitation, loss of temper. So I went to an indecisive state. I couldn't make up my mind with like what to do next. And because of that, I procrastinate. When I procrastinate, it's like a flywheel. Like first you stop making decisions. You become indefinite. Then you start to procrastinate because of that. Procrastinating makes you really depressed because you start to feel shameful that you're doing it. You're also realizing there's nothing happening. And so you get scared, and then it pushes you more to become more indecisive because you're not in a state to make decisions. Yeah. So I just like spiraled into depression for 5 months after the 3 months.
Oh, goodness.
So by the end of the year, I lost my seminar business.
Last year?
No, this was 2020. 2019, sorry.
2019.
Right before my year going into this online business. Okay. This is pre-launching the business. I was trying to figure it out. Okay. So I bought, luckily, this guy's program, and I invested into it, and I started learning all the things they do, and I'm like, wow, like, I'm doing this so wrong. So for 5 months during the depression, I tried to implement this guy's program. I made no money. And it took me 5 months just to get a Facebook group set up and all this stuff and build a webinar. In the 6th month, I got my first like $2,000 in sales, but I sold it the right way. Like I got 9 customers. I'm like, oh my God, this worked. Okay. That gave me inspiration to move on. And so it took another 6 months because I'm like, I learned the course stuff from him. I'm like, I want to go high ticket. So I took another 6 months to build out my course, do all the stuff so I can launch high ticket. My first month was June 2020. Okay. I launched my webinar ads. I got my webinar in place. I booked like, I think 8 or 9 calls. I closed 6 sales, all paid in full at $5,000. So I made $30,000. Okay. I had this strong confidence in me. Now here's the crazy thing. At that moment, the belief got put in me that now next month I'll make 50. The month after I'll make 100 because this guy was making a lot of money. Right. And that was the worst thing that could happen to me, having initial success. Because I didn't have any desire now anymore or need to build any other skills other than what I just did. So I got away with doing a little bit to get a lot. Off compensation makes you paid in other ways. 100%. So over the next 3 months, I barely made any money. So I made 30 grand. And as soon as I was seeing this girl at the time, I dropped like $1,000 in one day just like for her birthday. So I'm like, yeah, money's coming in.
Exactly.
It's all good. It's a traditional sales guy like thinking like, hey, you're going to make more money next.
Next sale.
The next month we made no sales. No sales. We went from 30 grand to 0. And then we went from 0 to closing only 2. And one was a payment plan, so I made like maybe 7,000. The month after that, I only made like 22, and then I got a refund, so I only made really 12.
Wow.
So for 3 months, I just struggled, and I was freaking out because at this time, COVID was happening. I was trying to pay my team. I was also spending money on ads, which is why I don't like the ads game anymore. I'm like in organic full time. I'm like, because there's exchange, like there's a risk. And then like it was just tough, and I had no direction. The guy I was trying to learn from, he was a dick. He didn't really like teaching. And so 4 months go in, I'm not happy with this girl. I'm with her for like the wrong reasons. I get COVID.
You personally, okay.
I get COVID. I gave it to her as well because the night I broke up with her, we hugged and I think she got it right there.
Oh goodness.
So like we broke up and I gave her a gift, a parting gift. So I get COVID. I just broke up with this girl. I have no money left in my account. And I go into like this 2-week quarantine that really messes you. Like, I mean, you do nothing for 2 weeks straight. Try to do nothing for 3 days straight. Like, you go insane. I had watched everything on Netflix I think I could have ever watched to the point where I just wanted to run my head through a wall because the bed sheets felt irritating to my skin. That's how long I was in my bed. It was really bad. And I started to like really crave life again. I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk. Like simplest things.
See the sunshine.
Yeah, I just want to feel grass. You know, it was like when you get deprived of something, you really like sand will taste like rice. Like it's really crazy. 2 weeks after that, I come out. I'm like, all right. I was actually taking sales calls while I had COVID too. I was just saying to like myself, like, you know. So I have no money. I ran out of money in the account. Literally, I'm like less than 10 grand now. Like that's me paying off payroll.
Yeah.
2 weeks left to the end of the month. It was in October. I'm like, I have at least 20 grand in debt this month to pay off after this 10. So I got to make at least 20. I don't know, something in me, man. I don't know where I got this from, but like when I'm faced with very challenging adversities, I get really excited.
You rise to the occasion, right?
Like my challenge self comes out and I'm like, I'm going to do more than just fix this. I don't know what it is. Like, so I got this like sense of faith just running through my veins. I'm like, it's going to be my biggest month in sales. I'm going to make 50 grand.
Okay.
I'm like, but it was 2 weeks into the month. I had made no money. The ads, I ran out of money to run ads.
Right.
So I didn't even know how to book calls.
Okay.
I didn't know organic.
Okay.
I had my team, everything. I'm like, this is going to be my biggest month ever. So here's the first thing I decided to do.
Okay.
First thing that came to my mind is like, when you're in a really shitty place, take your mind off your own problems and help someone else with their problems. This is this is a proven method. Like when you're in a bad place, literally go genuinely help someone else. I'm not just saying that as like secret living. Like I'm not
agree 100% with that.
This is a serious, energetic strategy. What happens to you is you reinstate your mind in a place where you can now figure out your situation. So what I did is I called up my friend. He had a coaching business. He was in my program. And I hadn't talked to him for a few months because he was just doing his own thing after he learned what I taught him. I call him, I'm going to come over. He's like, for what? I'm like, you made 10 grand in a month with my help. Let me get you to 50. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, man, I'll come over. We'll spend a whole day. He's like, dude, I was just praying about like getting more help from you. I'm like,
okay.
Well, you gave me COVID and a broken, heart. Like, thanks for that. Yeah. I'm like, you prayed for it. If I can put me in this predicament, that's what's leading me to this. I'm kidding. So I drive over to his house. I spent 8 hours with him at his house. And I was doing all this shit for his business. I didn't even do it for my business.
Right.
I wrote down all his metrics. Like I didn't do that at the time. Like I wrote down all the metrics. I'm like, here's your data. Here's what you got to do. Let's make an ad together. And I did all this stuff. And he ended up making, I think, 15 or 20 grand that same month. And he sat there. He's like, what'd you make this month? I'm like, nothing. I'm actually broke. And I'm his coach. He's my program. He goes, how are you sitting here right now? I'm like, because I am. He goes, I could never do what you're doing. He's like, what do you mean you're broke? I'm like, yeah, like this is how much is in my account. I don't have money to run ads. I don't know how I'm going to pay off the bills, but I'm going to figure it out. And he's like, I can never do that, man. He's like, how are you sitting here not freaking out? I'm like, faith. Faith is the ability to believe in something, not needing any evidence for it. And like most people, they never get through anything because they require so much evidence to believe something. Faith is just a state of mind. It's a choice. If you can't believe in something without a shrink of evidence, you'll never be a master of your own destiny. Because it's the ability to believe in something with zero evidence that allows you to create things that are possible, that no one ever thinks is possible. Most people are enslaved to their circumstance and evidences. It's like if Henry Ford thought like that, we'd never have a car. Because there was nothing around him as evidence to prove to him he should make a vehicle. He had to think beyond. So I exercised my faith. I'm like, I think this is going to be my biggest month in business. I don't know how yet, but I'm here to help you because I know that makes me feel good. I know that helps me think. And maybe I can find my solution to my problem and your problems. So I drive home that day. And while I was there, I actually got this idea. I got this idea. I'm like, some of my ads are really good ads. They perform really well. I'm like, what if I just post it on Facebook? So
as a social post.
Yeah. So I never had done that.
Okay.
So I took my best winning ad and I put it on Facebook. And instead of click this link, I just said DM me below or something.
Right.
That post made me $20,000 that week. It went viral.
The universe has this sense of a law of reciprocity.
It's interesting, man.
You give to others, you get in return.
It's that same week. It was crazy. Like there's 2 weeks left until I didn't remember this so vividly. It was 14th of October, and I knew I only had 14 days or 20 days until I realized 16 days until I have the money to pay off everything. And your mind goes to places like, I'm like, who am I going to borrow from if I don't make the money? Like these are the moments that define you as an entrepreneur. Like those moments. It's not the fucking good moments.
No.
Your character and skill as an entrepreneur is built when you have nothing.
Yes.
And you're able to make something from nothing. So I'm like, who am I going to borrow from? I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to borrow. But if I had to, I'll do it from this person. Okay, so I'm figuring it out. And I'm like, this idea came to me. I'm like, let me try to post my winning ad on Facebook. So I posted on Facebook. It goes viral. It was a story of my dad.
Oh, okay.
And it was about business. It was a very strategic written post. It was really nice. But it was about my dad. And I realized the power of viral organic marketing at that time. And now that's what we teach. But I didn't know that back then. So I had 4 to 6 people comment me below. I booked 4 calls from that. I took 2 full pays. So my first $10,000 day. Remember
that day?
Previously it was $30,000 a month. Now it's $10,000 in one day. 2 people paid in full at 5, and 2 people put deposits and paid the next week. So I made $20,000 in one day in revenue, $10,000 in cash or $11,000 in cash. And I'm like, holy shit. So I took the money I had and I put it back into ads.
Okay.
I made another $30,000 in the next 8 days. Because my winning ad was working. It always worked. And then my organic was working. I brought in like 8 clients or something like that. 6 or 7 clients at 5 within, it was 10 or 12 clients by the end of the month. And I'm like, holy shit, I just had a $58,000 a month. So now I'm like, this thing built in me. Every time you go through a really strong adversity, you tell yourself you're going to get out of it and you do. Something in you gets built. It's like another brick laid in, like, I don't know how to explain it. Something that wasn't there before now is. It's just like really clear, strong faith in your abilities. So I just like leveled up in faith. And I'm like, whoa, I just went from the worst month ever. COVID, breakup, like no money, COVID breakup, to my biggest month of business. And I'm like feeling great again. I'm like, okay, it's like an elastic band. Adversity is like an elastic band. It's like you stretch your back.
Stretch before it breaks.
And if you can have faith, it doesn't snap, but you launch.
Yeah.
So it's like the worse it is, the further it jumps out. That's kind of what happened. Like it was really bad.
Okay.
And then I just exploded in business. So I went from 50,000. I'm like, next month I'm gonna make 100. I didn't even know how. I'm gonna make 100. 20 sales. I did the math. First 12 sales calls of the month, no sales. I'm like, I had a 40%, 50% close rate. I'm like, what's going on? So I'm not saying, I'm like, God, you're funny. You're testing me. I'm like, I just made $58,000 in like literally an impossible circumstance. So this is just the test to see if I will lose faith. When the things I thought would happen didn't. Most people quit right there.
Yep.
So I'm like, 12 sales calls, I didn't make a sale. I'm like, all right, I'm still making $100,000 this month. Because last month I made 58. There was no reason for me to. This month, at least I have a reason. So as I'm going throughout the week, I make a post about my $50,000 a month. And again, I'm just dabbling in organic at this point. I wasn't really doing much. So I made a post. I'm like, I want to do a celebration post. Tag my team members. I'm like, we had a $58,000 a month. It's amazing. It went viral. I went viral again. And all these people are like, holy shit, like, what'd you do? And like, so I had a client of mine in my program. Okay. And at the time, it was just weekly calls.
And the program was a coaching program?
Yeah, it was a coaching program called Scaling It Clients. Okay. at the time it was actually called Speaking at Clients because it was about webinars. Now it's about scale. So this girl that was like a really good student of mine, she had made a few sales here and there. She saw the post and you know, she was inspired by it. And so there's a few people who saw that big post. A friend of mine hits me up out of nowhere. She's a coach as well. She's making about 30, 40 grand a month. And I've known her for a while. I respect her a lot. She's very interesting, very good at what she does. And we just catch up out of nowhere, randomly.
Okay.
And I'm like, how you doing? She's like, good. You know, I paid these agency. They're doing some ads for me. I'm like, oh, like, how you doing? She's like, you know, I'm like, I just made $58,000 last month. Like, I do ads to webinars. She goes, how? Like, what are you doing? Like, we're not getting any results. And we just organically start talking about, let me see your stuff. I saw her stuff. I'm like, you're doing this all wrong. Like, your ads are shit. Like, your ads setup is placed wrong. And they're like, she's like, can you help me? I'm like, well, I mean, I don't have a program for like this stuff. Like, the program's for about something else, but I mean, you want to buy a program. She goes, no, like, can you help me one-on-one? And I'm like, it wouldn't be cheap.
Yeah.
You know, like, if you ever get a good idea, just that's default, just always be like, it's not cheap. Like, just that should be a reflex.
Yeah.
If they're just like, can you do this to him? Like, it's going to be really expensive. Like, that's just be your filler word.
Yep.
So I always learned that from like the beginning. I'm like, it's not going to be cheap. She's like, we can figure it out. I'm like, what would you need? She's like, one-on-one. I'm like, all right, how about this? In 60 days, I build you out your funnel. I create your first winning ads. You can start booking calls, like 50 calls a month or something. Or something. I think it was like book like 10 or 20 calls a week or something like that. And she's like, okay, how much? And I'm like, well, I'm in a mastermind right now. And another person's doing something similar to this and charging 25,000 USD. So I'm like, I won't charge 25,000 USD. By the way, this is a strategic sales method.
Okay.
You always start with a bigger number.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Always. It's called a price marinade, or really it's called price comparison. You give one number and another number. So I'm like, this guy, and it's so random. You could just pull it out of your ass, like, but it was true. Like, there was another guy, Andrew Stickle. He's actually, he's an inner circle.
Oh, yeah, I
so
know
Andrew Stickle at the time was charging 25 grand for done for your service.
Yeah.
So he was my inspiration. I'm like, this guy's making like 250 grand a month in Dan Henry's mastermind. So I'm like, all right, this guy's charging 25 grand. You know, I could be just as good. I won't charge 25 though. I'll charge you 20 and I'll do it in Canadian. So it's not 26,000 in Canadian. So I'm like, it's 20,000. It's like 15 grand American. She goes, well, that guy probably has results. I'm like, so go work with that guy. She goes, but like, I see your stuff. I'm like, I know, but like, what I'm going to do for you is a lot more than what he does for his clients. I'm just giving you a reference point. I'm not saying I'm going to give you what he's giving you. I'm just saying that's my reference point. Probably costs around that much. She goes, and you're going to help me with all this. I'm like, yeah, don't worry. If it doesn't, don't worry, I'll give you money back. Like, to me, I was like, oh, that was always a natural saying in my mouth. Yeah. Like, because people are just afraid of buying.
Exactly.
Because of the fear. I'm like, but like, I don't need your money that bad. Like, so even if I needed it, I wouldn't hold on to it. So I'm like, get your money back if you're not happy. I don't care. And it just always eases at the close. She goes, okay. So I made a $20,000 sale.
Day one.
It was like halfway through November, though.
Yeah, okay.
So I had all this long streaks of no's.
Yeah.
So then it hit me. I'm like, oh, God is so interesting. Like, life is interesting. I like to say, God, life is so interesting. I thought I was going to make 20 sales at $5 grand.
Just made one.
So this is why faith is so powerful, because if I just base my decisions off evidence, I would think the old way is what's going to get me get the new thing, but it's not. See, I didn't think about 20,000.
Yeah.
But I was convinced with faith, I'm going to have $100,000. So I'm like, okay, I just need 4 more people.
Exactly.
So now my mind's alert. And I put a graph on my whiteboard in the office. And at the time, my top closer, Isaiah, was working with me, but he wasn't a closer yet. So he was like watching me. I'm like, don't tell the team. We just made 20 grand. I just knocked it off. I'm like, we're going to make 100 grand this month. He's like, okay. He's watching me for the first time. I've never made 100 grand in a month. I made it in revenue, like 116 grand once from an event. Okay. But like half of that I gave it to the president of Think and Grow Rich. But I've seen that money come through. But like, it wasn't mine. So I looked at him. He was like watching me, like building all this faith. Like, whoa, this guy said he's going to do something. He's going to do it. So as I'm going throughout the day, we're doing some sales calls. I make no sales the whole month, by the way. No 5K sales. Wow. I just had a 58,000. See, it's an interesting thing, business.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm trying to say. People are trying to get consistency and shit. It's like, nah. No. In the beginning, everything is just like volatile. Like, one month I had all these sales, and like next month I made no sales. So I'm going throughout the week. And as I close this girl, I'm like, who else is like her that I can close? So I hit up another friend of mine that's friends with her that I'm friends with, and we're close, but I've never had an offer like this. I've never had the skills to charge this much. But he's always wanted to work with me. I hit him up. I'm like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what we can do for you. He was like a men's testosterone coach. He was really cool what he did. And so we're talking, and he's like, how much? I'm like, it's 20,000. He's like, all right, let's do it. I'm like, USD? I'm not going to say that. I'm still charging Canadian. So I'm like, great. I'm like, are you sure you want me? He's like, bro, don't even stop. He's like, I trust you. I'm paying you because it's you. I'm not paying you for like what you're saying. Like, don't worry, I trust you. I'm like, great. I'm like, can I take the payment now? He's like, sure. So he took $20,000 and like my stripes started really spiking up.
Yeah.
See, like in 2 sales now I made what I made almost last month.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I'm thinking big.
Yeah.
Like, see, I thought I was thinking big back then, but I was like, I was thinking big. And like most people are afraid of that. Like charging more is easier to scale the business than anything else. So I close him and I'm like, I wonder who else. So see how this is, it's in the beginning, it's all about energy and faith. It's not about like tactics or tracking. It really isn't. Like it's all about tracking yourself. So like, look at these random coincidences that brought me to $106,000 that month. Second personnel, my 40 grand. I'm like, holy shit, this is going to be the biggest month ever again. I'm like, my spiritual faith was being so strengthened. I'm like, this shit works. Because I was seeing it happen. Then I see one of my clients in my core program do a Facebook Live and stuff. And I was so proud of her because like we taught people how to do like speaking on camera. So I just randomly, it was just an urge in me, like a little nudge. I'm like, let me Facebook call her. So I Facebook video call her. And she's like, hey. I'm like, I just saw your video. Congrats. You're so awesome. Like, whatever. And I just like, randomly, honestly, nothing else. I'm just like, hey, congrats. And I just had some time. She's like, yeah, awesome. I'm like, how you doing? How's your business? How you doing? She's like, I'm good. I'm doing this. I'm about to finish this module. I'm like, that's awesome. That's really great. And I'm like, I have a question for you. I want to run a challenge in the group so that all the clients could like, strive for a result and they could win to me. I'm like, what would be a really cool challenge bonus I can give away to the clients if you guys want? Like, what would be exciting? She goes, more time with you. I said, I know, but like something scalable, like, I don't know, like a laptop or like, I don't know, like something else, anything else. She's like, honestly, if we got more one-on-one time with you, that'd be like worth a lot. So I'm like, well, here's the thing. And me being a really good salesperson, like I always have the offers in the back of my mind.
Exactly.
So I started seeding it. I'm like, well, the only people I give one-on-one time to, because in that time I didn't do one-on-one to anyone. I'm like, it was a group program. I'm like, the only people I do one-on-one with is like my elite clients. And so those people, like I'm actually working with them personally and over like 60 days. And every week I see them and I build out this funnel for them. And like, that's a lot of money. So I can't give that away. She goes, yeah, okay, well, then, anything else would be cool. And I'm like, I'm such an idiot. I should ask her if she wants to do that. Right. So I'm like, would you be interested in that? And she goes, yeah, I would be. I'm like, but it's not cheap, right? And she goes, I understand. Okay. How much? I'm like, 20,000. I'm like, it's 25,000, but you already paid 5. So I'll knock it off.
I love it.
It's 20,000. She goes, do I have to pay it up front? I'm like, I'm gonna break it into 2. She goes, let me talk to my sister. I'll call you back, but I definitely want to do it. And I started pulling away. Like the kind of sales we do is push away strategy. We don't try to convince people ever. So I'm just like, but are you sure this is like for you? Like you haven't made money in the program yet. Right. Like it's a lot of work. It's signing up for more work. Like, and she goes, no. I know I need to do this. This is going to change my business. I'm like, all right, well, get back to me. 2 days later, hits me up. My sister's funding half of it. I'm going to fund the other half. Can I pay right now? I'm like, no problem. Cash collected another 20,000. I'm sitting
4
there.
4 days, you're at 60 grand.
I'm fucking freaking out. Like, I'm saying, I'm like, what is going on? I'm not only selling my core program, I'm not even selling it, but I'm selling something that I just made up.
Literally.
And I'm making 100 grand. I'm like, I never thought 100 grand would look like this. I'm like, holy shit. So in my blissful, it's like 3 weeks into November, my blissful, state, I'm feeling good. And I was working in an office back then. And the guy who owned the office that I rented the floor from, he was like a mentor to me. Actually, my Jaguar I owned, he sold it to me. Okay. Taught me how to golf. His name is Mohammed. I miss him a lot. So he was just by the kitchen. Like, so I go to get these coffees and then I heard him in the office. And I came by to just say hi. I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, how's it going? He's like, meet my new marketing assistant. And so he met me to his intern. I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? And he's like, how's everything? I'm like, great, man. We're at 60,000 in sales this month already. And it's pretty crazy. Like, I'm like, all this stuff's happening. I'm like, all I'm doing is like, I'm doing their marketing for them, building them a funnel, a webinar to like pretty much book calls consistently. It's really crazy how quickly it's working. He's like, oh, I thought we talked about doing something like that earlier. I'm like, yeah, but you wanted to do it for like your services. I'm like, you could technically do it for your services, but I'm more of a program salesperson. He goes, well, now I have a marketing assistant. He can actually work with you on it. And so, because he doesn't like to, he's like really a hands-off kind of CEO. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like at that point in business where 20 years in, he's just like, I don't want to touch stuff.
I totally get that.
Yeah. Like you're probably in the same place. He's just like, I don't want to learn new stuff. It's just like, who's the right people? So he's like, you couldn't teach him. I'm like, so are you saying you want me to like work with him to build you a funnel and everything? And he goes, well, yeah. I'm like, I mean, you could just do what I'm doing with everyone else. It's just a one-on-one thing in 9 days, you know, do all the stuff. He goes, cool. And he's not the type of person to ever ask about money. So I'm like, it's 20,000. He goes, awesome. Let's talk about it. I'm like, okay. So like 2 days later, we sit down and have a meeting and I just show him the pitch. And he goes, all right. And pays $7,500 over 3 months, something like that. So I closed my fourth 20K from like people I didn't expect happening.
Absolutely.
Now I'm at $80,000. I've collected about half of it because some of them wanted to do payment plans. And I'm sitting there and it's like 4 days left to the end of November. And in November, it's Black Friday. In Canada. Is that a Canadian thing or is that?
No, it's here in the U.S. too.
Yeah, so.
It's after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so it was Black Friday. And I saw all these guys running like promotions, and I didn't have any preparation for promotions, but I'm like, we should do something, you know, like. So I came up with a last minute idea. I'm like, you know, I'm selling this $20,000, $25,000 offer right now where I build your funnel for you. And I'm like, why don't I just give it away for free, but I'll just give the funnel template. And I just set them up. Like I have a VA, I could just set them up, but I don't have to build their ads or anything. Like I just set up their funnel essentially and just say it's a $25,000 bonus because I charge $25K for me to do it for you. So I'm like, brilliant. Yeah. So I run this promotion, my email list, my social media, everything. And I'm like, sign up by November 31st or whatever, and you get this $25K bonus. We'll build your high ticket funnel for you, get high ticket clients, all this stuff. We book like 20 calls in like 24 hours.
Wow.
And we close another 4 people at 5K. We made 106,000 or something like that with some change with receivables. So 106,000, 4 clients at $5,000, 4 clients at 20. I remember ending the night. I'm like, all right, this has to be a joke. Like this was way too easy. Like I never thought it could happen like this. So my mind expanded so much. These are the moments that define my like my thinking size. Like I'm like, there really is nothing I can't do. 3 months later, I exercised the same skill, and we're stuck at 50 grand the whole month in March of 2021. We're stuck at 50 grand the whole month. Okay. This ads agency wasn't doing good results. I wasn't doing organic. It was just like shit. In the last 5 days of the month, from March 25th to 31st, I'm like, this is going to be my biggest month ever. I'm just like, let me push myself. See, at least those months I had a whole month. I'm like, I got 50 grand in my Stripe. I'm like, I want to get to 200. This is going to be my first $200,000 month because I already hit 100. I looked at my whole team. I declared it. There were 6 days left to the end of the month. I'm like, guys, we're going to make 200 grand this month. This is going to be our biggest month. They're like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, sure. I'm like, watch. Yeah, we're gonna just watch. I'm like, just watch me. It's going to happen. 2 days in, I'm trying to think really hard, obsessionally. How am I going to make another 150 grand? 2 days into it. And at this time, I forgot about the elite stuff I sold back then because that was like 4 months ago. Yeah. And so I'm like thinking. And I'm like, let me just run another promotion like I did last time. Like the done for you bonus. So I started running this promotion, done for you bonus, 25K, build your high ticket funnel. And we started booking some calls. And I closed it. And at that time, it was 10K the price. So I just need 15 more clients. I closed one guy, I closed another guy. And then I put on my IG story, one of my clients that had just joined my program, they had made 22 grand within 3 weeks with just my sales script. So they hit me up on Instagram. They're already in my program. They paid $5 grand. They hit me up on Instagram and they go, hey man, we're interested in this. So this is a true story. I literally write out, I'm like, bro, this is already the funnel you have inside the program. You don't need to worry about this. And I wrote it all out. And I was like, and then I deleted it. Yeah. I'm like, why am I sending this to them? So I respond, I'm like, let's hop on a call. So I get on a call with them. And they're brothers. Now they make $250,000 a month with us. Okay. They run an Amazon business. Eric and Brian, Zap Twins. I get on a call with them. I'm like, so here's the deal. I did this a while back, $25,000, where I build your funnel, but there's way more to it. We meet every week. We do all these things. I will literally scale you to 100 grand a month. I just did it. I've done it before, so I can show you how. So they go, can I talk to my brother about it? I'm like, yeah, for sure. So they talk. They come back to like, can we discount SGC off the thing? I'm like, no, because it's a different thing. They go, can we do a payment? So I'm like, no, you just got to pay it. And I go, well, if you don't make 100 grand in the next 90 days, 100 grand a month, I'll give your money back. It's quite the ballsy guarantee. So they go, all right, let's do it. But you knew
it worked.
I did it.
Okay, you had faith it worked.
Faith. See, I know I worked.
Yes.
How do I know they're going to get that?
You'd make it work.
That's all it is. See, you never can guarantee another person's result.
Oh, definitely, 100%.
That's what I'm saying.
100%.
I just knew I could figure it out.
Right.
I don't know if they would.
Exactly.
But I knew I would at least give it a go. They paid me in full, 25 grand. Now I'm like, holy shit, that's how I'm going to do it. See, I'm like, it was like 4 days left to the end of the month. So I'm like, okay, I just get 6 people at 25 grand. I make it $200,000 a month. So now I run a promotion inside my client group.
Okay.
One-on-one mentorship, looking for 5 students that want to do this. I get like 12 people commenting, 13. I got a bunch of one-on-one calls. I close another 2 people from the program.
Okay.
So I'm at 75,000 now on 125. This is my biggest month in business so far. I'm a part of, I was in Dan Henry's mastermind, and what we did is a group of us in his mastermind created our own mastermind to just meet bi-weekly to just actually mastermind, because his mastermind was more like him teaching. Yeah. So I was in this thing, and like a day later, I was in this roundtable mastermind with like all these big players. Some of them are 2 Common Club Award winners, some of them weren't. And they were asking me about my promotion I'm running. I'm like, yeah, this is how it's working. It's what's but I'm like, the real bread and butter is coming from this elite thing where I do one-on-one, and I just give you to 100 grand a month, and it's coaching and all this stuff. I built your curriculum for you, I built your course for you, everything. And one of the guys there, he has like 3 2 Common Club awards. He goes, do you think that's a good thing for me to do with you? In front of everyone. I'm like, I didn't start the mastermind to like solicit. I'm like, you know. And I had another guy who tried to work with me for 25 grand earlier, but he makes like 300, 400 grand a month that time. And I'm like, I don't feel integrable with taking your money. Like, I should be learning from you. I don't want to learn from you, so don't pay me. So he's like, dude, your integrity is so strong. He's like, I want to just give you 25 grand just because like you're you. I'm like, keep your money. But he was a big fan of mine. So I'm like, what do you think? And he starts raving on about me in front of the people. From that day, I think I got 4 clients.
From that event?
From that day. On just Zoom.
Oh,
I got 4 clients over the next 90 days. Like they all ended up being planted the seed to like work with Armin. And like they all did, and they got way better results than the program they're in.
Absolutely.
So he raves on about me. I'm like, look, we could talk about this later if you want. I just want to be respectful. And he's like, no problem. So we get on a call later. I'm like, so what's your goal? What's this? What's this? I'm like, here's how it works. Remember, I already have 3 people. He goes, I just want this. Pretty much he paid like $30,000 to Dan Henry.
Yeah.
And all he really wanted help with is building on his course. Like he didn't care about anything else. He's just like, I know how to make money. Someone needs to put my shit into a course, like into a coaching program. I'm like, no problem. I built it in 7 minutes for him on the first call.
Wow.
I'm like, here's your outline. He's like, okay, good. I'm like, now do this and you'll build out your curriculum. That's all. And like, go sell a few one-on-ones and practice it. Like, I'm like, it was so easy to me. And he was like, this is literally what I paid for that I wanted.
That's literally what it's all about, though.
Yeah.
It's easy to you because it's something you've developed over time. It's commonplace. But for most people, they've never even touched on the surface of this stuff in their own life and their own business. Yeah. So to them, it's super, super valuable. To you, it's commonplace.
Yeah. And I think that's the gift thing, right? It's like something simple for you. So I just to wrap up the story, I closed them. We paid another 25. I was at 100,000 in cash. It's only been 3 days since I told my team we're going to make 200,000.
Boom.
The other 2 came over. One person out of nowhere hits me up. Again, all these coincidences, manifestations. One of my clients hit me up. He's like, hey, what do you think about this person? They're charging me 15 grand for this thing, for like life coaching. I'm like, why are you paying 50 grand for life coaching? I'm like, I can fucking life coach you. I'm like, that's literally what I did for 3 years. She's like, really? I didn't know it's an option. I'm like, yeah, well, I have this elite thing right now. It's only 25. You have 15 of it. And like, we'll do life coaching and business and we'll do everything. You'll make your first, 100 grand a month. And she goes, okay. So I was just sweeping in sales. And then the 6th person came from my program again. So I'm like, holy shit, we just did it was $199,800 in rev. And we collected 120 of it. I'm like, interesting. We just had a $200,000 a month. So now I'm like, this fire's inside me. Because I'm like, there's nothing you can't do, My team's like, I thought you were joking, man. I'm like, you guys got to step the fuck up. I'm like, you got to step the fuck up.
Plenty of time to get it done.
I had my one-on-ones with these clients of mine that just paid me all this money. So I did one-on-ones with them for 90 days straight. 3 of them got to over $100,000 a month and never dropped below. The other 3 made their first 30 or 50,000.
Okay.
That one girl who wanted the life coaching ended up closing a $30,000 contract. Like, I was good. Like I did really good, but I just could never do it again. Half my week was just one-on-ones.
That's one-on-ones are definitely challenging.
But I had this fire in me where I was looking at them like, if I made this much in 5 days, what's your excuse? And so I started coaching these guys on serious mindset. And all of them grew. Like they became my millionaires. And so that was like my 200,000. I exercised my faith again. I keep pushing my boundaries to see what I can do. And it's like, now it's like those numbers are like funny to me. Like we did 400,000 from like 1 week in a challenge last month. And I'm like, yeah. And okay. Like how do you do 2 million a month? To me, I'm like, that's exciting and understand that. You need consistency in daily activities. You can't do it. You could do an event, sure. But like, then you're the business. There's no business. And so I'm like, to have a company consistently scale to a daily regular activity that generates $50,000 a day, 10,000, you know, like it would be 30 grand a day would be 900,000 a month. So it'd be like 50,000 days, about 1.5. And I look at that, I'm like, to generate $100,000 a month business, which would be 3 million, $100,000 a day business, which is 3 million a month. I'm like, how much meticulous tracking, monitoring, lead flow, lead management, follow-ups, sales, tracking have to happen for you to be able to generate 100 grand a day in business regularly? So that's more exciting to me now. The boring regularness of things, not the, can you just prove it? So like, I don't care about hitting $1 million a month anymore. I'm like, before I used to, I'm like, but that actually makes no sense. Like, there's no point of hitting it. Can you keep it?
Exactly.
So I'm like, how do I make $1 million a month? So like, I'm already thinking about the second month I'm going to make $1 million from. I don't care about the first.
Right.
So I'm thinking about the second and third month.
Consistency things I need to put into practice. So I hit $1 million this month, $1 million next month, $1 million the third month in, $1 million the fourth month in.
And because you think about those months, you actually do different things for the first $1 million you make.
Oh, yes.
Like, because if I just wanted to make $1 million, I'd just sell 100 people out of an event. But I'm like, but then what next month?
How to duplicate it.
So when you think about that, you start building infrastructure for how to handle bringing in a few million a month every single month.
It's like running a marathon.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's all the steps that you take in that process of the marathon. Just imagine if you took out steps 10 through 25. You'd never finish because you can't get to the next step without those 10 to 25 steps.
And most people in business are sprinting in a marathon.
Oh, gosh, yes.
That's all. That's all it is, really.
People aren't patient.
Yeah. I don't even remember the question you asked that we went on this tangent.
I think, well, it's a lovely tangent, and everyone, I'm sure, who's watching is
hopefully
there's a huge amount of value.
The untold stories.
Well, let me say this. Like, I mean, over the course of your life, you've learned a ton of things. You've consumed knowledge. You've applied that knowledge into your own life. You've seen what's worked, what hasn't worked. I'm curious, if you were to go back in time and sit down with young Armin, and you only have an option to give one piece of advice, one piece of counsel to young Armin, what would that be?
Every time you say that, I think of the rapper.
That's who I'm talking about.
Piece of advice.
One piece of advice. Because you've collected a lot over the course of your years.
I'm afraid anything I would tell that mind, it would go over their head. They're too busy just trying to feel safe. Wisdom can't enter a mind that's full of fear. I could say whatever I want to them. Then believing it is another thing. That's why you don't try to give wisdom to a child unless they're asking for it. A child has to grow up to realize they need to seek wisdom. But if I were to say something to him, I'd be like, everything ends up working out. Just don't worry. Everything ends up working out. That's a belief I have today. It's like everything ends up working out all the time. I would tell the person, the younger version of me, everything ends up working out. So every time you think something's going bad, it's not. It's just going to work out. You just don't know how. If I give advice to them, if young Armin were to listen, I would tell them to choose anything and just stick to it. That's the only way you'll be happy. Be great at something. Just choose anything and stick to it. I could have probably been a really famous YouTube artist, singer, songwriter by now if I kept at 16 till now. 100%. Like, it's not even a fucking doubt in my mind. I would have probably had 1 million subscribers on YouTube, met with all the people. I was already networking with all the people. Probably would have been in LA. Like, I probably would have music videos. I probably would have performed at places if I just stuck to it. Easily. If I was continued sales in any of the positions I had back then, or network marketing, I probably would have a really big business today.
Consistency is what matters.
Focus is the only skill of life. Everything else can't happen without focus. If you want to see how focused you are, it's like I was talking to someone yesterday about thinking. I'm like, because you have thoughts, you think. Thoughts aren't thinking. That's like saying you have water because a water stream runs by you. Or saying that you can get wet from the word water. The word water doesn't make you wet. Like, your mind is filled with thoughts doesn't mean you're thinking. It just means your mind is running thoughts. Thinking is a conscious action. So if you can't, for example, light a candle, stare at the candle. Try to look at that flame for 10 seconds straight without one thing thinking in your mind, one thought, you'll notice within about 3 to 5 seconds of staring at the candle, you'll think of something. And it's weird how it works. It's very sporadic. You might just be looking at the candle and then notice the color yellow and go, oh, it's yellow. And then you'll think about this thing you have that's yellow. And you'll, oh yeah, that blouse I have is really yellow. You know, a girl will be like, oh, this yellow blouse. I remember I bought that from Zara. I probably should give it back to Zara. And she starts thinking about like, you know, but what's the refund policy? Fucking, I already passed 30 days. Maybe I can go this weekend. And then you think about the weekend and you think, oh shit, did I have something this weekend? And you'd be like, I haven't called my mom in a while, so let me call her this week.
Wow.
You're not looking at a flame anymore. You're somewhere else. If you can't look at a flame, simple candlelight, for 10 seconds straight, you have no control of your mind. Like business is going to be a fucking ride for you. Because there's hundreds of variables moving at all the time. And a concentrated, calm mind is the only thing that gets shit done. Only thing. So if I were to go back to our younger man, I'd just look at him and be like, listen, I don't care what you do. Just stick to it long enough to see it through. And learn how to just stick to one thought at a time, one decision at a time. Or else you won't be good at anything you do. That's probably what I tell them, because that's the lesson I learned over time.
Wow.
It doesn't matter what you put your mind to. But if your mind isn't calm enough to do something and stick to it, no matter what you do, it's wrong. So it's an exercise I've been teaching my clients, like just look at a candlelight and catch yourself. The moment you cannot think is the moment I'll tell you.
True stillness of mind.
Yes. I'm like, when you can, I met a Freemason when I was a kid once. This is a very short example, not a story, don't worry. I've been here for a while. I met a Freemason once, and I thought they're the key to my success. Remember, at that time I thought, I got to find someone that's going to give it to me. And I looked at him, I was telling him all the stuff I've learned about, you know, spiritualism. And he goes, I'm like, mentor me. He's like, no. I'm like, what do you mean? I was so offended. I'm like, I'm a good student. He's like, you're a terrible student. I'm like, no. I swear. I know a lot of things. I could probably mastermind with you about it. He's like, let me show you something. He owned the coffee shop I was in. He takes me to the washroom, puts a cup underneath the sink, turns on the running water, starts overflowing. He goes, what do you see? I'm like, it's a coffee cup with water in it. He goes, what do you really see? I go, I get it. The cup is full. He's like, that's your mind. And until it's empty, I can't teach you. And around the time, I'm like, okay, fine. How do I empty my mind? He goes, can't tell you that. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you leave me with the problem and not tell me the solution? So I sit down and I'm like, please, like, tell me, like, I want to learn. Like, you know, how do I empty my mind? He's like, you have to stop thinking. I'm like, what do you mean stop thinking? The fuck you mean stop thinking? Everything in life is thinking.
Right.
Like, everything you think you know is from a thought you're having. And he looks at me. He's like, I'm not going to mentor you. I'm like, oh, God. And I was really pissed. And he gave me this Freemason thing, like this code, like this silent formula, some shit. I don't even remember what it's called. Okay. But it's this ability. All I remember is this. He remember explaining it to me like this. He goes, it's when you're sitting in a group and the group is talking about something that they know nothing about. And they're sharing all these things about it, but you know way more about it than they do. And you have no need to say anything about it. That's all he said to me. I'm like, that's all I remember. I don't know why I remember it that way. It's like I'm sitting in a group. I'm an expert in finance, let's say. Everyone's talking about taxes, and like you know 100 times more than that, but you have no impulse to interrupt. That stillness of mind, a silent formula. The one who is the most silent is the most powerful. So he taught me this. He's like, you have to stop thinking. Still mind. Silence. Or else you're not really ever present enough to live. So I left and I didn't know what that meant back then. But now I look back, I'm like, oh my God. It's when I'm teaching people, like you're not living until you're present. So like I would just tell Armin, like, learn to calm your mind, stay to one thing, stay focused. Focus is really the only skill in life that gets you anywhere. If you can't focus, doesn't matter what you do. If I give you the right formula to a wrong thinking mind, you always fuck it up. If I give you the wrong formula to the right thinking mind, you always figure it out. Everything starts and ends in the mind.
It points me to a memory of a quote from Epictetus, which is a Stoic philosopher, and he says, essentially, it's nearly impossible to teach someone something they think they already know. And the fact that you have to release yourself from understanding all of the different things that are going on to say, you know what, I know nothing, and now I can learn. It's powerful. I'd love to, before we wrap up, I'd love to just push you into a thought exercise for a moment.
Let's do it.
I want you to imagine So we went back in time to talk to young Armin. I'm just curious, what would the conversation look like if the future Armin were to come back in time to sit next to you on the couch? What do you think the future Armin would be telling you?
I've already talked to a future Armin.
Tell me about it.
I do this exercise with people in my life. I make them meet their younger self and their older self. So I'm like, it feels like familiar with what you're asking me to do. What would the future Armin tell me if they were sitting on the couch with me?
Only one thing, though. They only have
advice?
You get to choose.
Oh, just say anything.
What would the future Armin say to you? But he can only tell you one thing. Maybe a piece of advice, maybe counsel, maybe what to look out for and what to do. What would he say?
Right. Well, if it was a statement, it would just be, I was right about you.
I love it.
Yeah, if it was a statement, it'd be, I was right about you. I always knew. I have this random feeling and certainty that I'm just going to do great things. So the older Armin would have come back and go, I was right. If they were to look at me, I'd be like, fuck yeah, I was right too.
So blessed to be able to witness that too.
It would just be like this calm acceptance of like, we knew. If it was advice, future Armin. It's funny because I did this exercise a couple years back, and the future Armin told me everything's going to be okay. So like, don't worry. Now I feel like that is who I am today.
Right.
Because everything is okay and I generally don't worry.
Exactly.
So I'm like, I might have to go revisit him to get the next piece of advice because I've already so quickly understood the last. Yeah. But if we were to do it again, man, it's really tough. You know, I'm actually happy that I can't answer this because it means I don't feel like there's any gap left between where I am and who I want to be. Genuinely don't feel like anything lacks that I need advice for.
You're constantly in this state of becoming.
Yeah, it's like anything I could say right now is what I already am doing and working on. So it's tough. I think the next level like would be going lateral, like going not deeper into the same thoughts, but like something off whim that I never thought about. It would have to come from someone that's ninja with their mind. Because like I don't feel a gap between old Armin and now Armin. I feel like I'd be this way. It's weird because I feel like I would be this way even if I was 50 right now.
Okay.
Think this way, feel this way, act this way. I'm sure I'd be like more mature and whatever, but
there's always going to be evolution.
But like my wisdom is growing every day because I seek so much of it, and I just don't feel like it would be any different. I would just probably still be this wise, inspiring guy who like does big things and like is enthusiastic. I don't. There's no difference between that Armin and me. So like whatever I would tell myself, I'm already telling myself right now.
Wow.
It's just the weird feeling that comes over me when you ask me that question.
I love it. I mean, I just want to say I'm so thankful that you've been willing to just share so much with us today, to be so genuine. You know, when I first met you, like I knew that this is the guy that I wanted to know because I knew you were not only going places, you were helping others go along with you in that journey. And that is truly inspiring. So just thank you very much. Truly from the bottom of my heart of sharing what you've been willing to share. If someone who's listening to this or watching this wants to reach out and get to know more about you, what's the best way for them to do that? Like, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah. Instagram or Facebook. Just Armin Shafee. It's ARMINSHAFEE. I'm on Instagram. There's just the in front of the name. Or my website's highticketcoaching.com. So anyone wants to check out highticketcoaching.com, you can. But mostly my Instagram, Facebook, I'm active on. So
wonderful.
Anyone message me there, we could always talk.
Armin, thank you again so much for coming in, sharing your wisdom, your struggles and your triumphs. And I know that the vicarious learning that you've helped share with the audience is something that's going to be truly valuable to them. So guys, again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for investing time in yourselves by investing in time in others. I wish you well in your journey. I can't wait to see you on the next episode of Entrepreneur Unleashed. Bye for now. Armin, thank you so much. I'm going to stand up.
Wow. The interview.
Wow, guys. That was an amazing episode. I hope you got a lot of value out of it. Before I let you go, though, I need to remind you about our Tax Express class. If you're a business owner in the United States, you're not going to want to miss it. All you need to do is click that link in the description below, and you can learn so much more. But just as a teaser, the strategies that we share in there can help you shave thousands of dollars off of your next tax bill and every tax bill going forward. I can't wait to see you on the inside.